Chapter 421, Annihilation. Anduin swung his long sword to his left hand with a backhand swing, then reached into his robes and pulled out his wand, dark painting. I knew something was missing. Turns out it was you, Anduin muttered to himself with a wry smile. He then moved the wand towards the end of the hilt of his long sword. As he brought the wand close to the hilt, a thin, round opening appeared on the previously flat metal surface. The size and thickness of the opening matched the wand perfectly. Without hesitation, Anduin inserted the wand into the hilt, as if it were a sheath. Once the wand was fully inserted, the opening closed, and the hilt returned to its original form. It was clear that the hilt had been designed to be hollow from the start, with the specific function of housing the wand. That's right. With the blessing of dark painting, you are now complete. Your name shall be Annihilation, which rhymes with Anhui, Anduin declared, feeling the sword grow more solid in his grip. However, as soon as the wand and the sword merged, Annihilation began to change. The sword, which had been calm, now shone with a brighter aura. To the onlookers, it appeared as if Anduin was holding a long beam of blue-silver light. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the light was actually a solid, liquid-like plasma flowing on the surface of the sword. Surrounded by a colorful halo, Anduin was taken aback by the transformation. Why had the sword gone berserk after inserting the wand? Despite the unexpected change, the sword still felt intimately connected to him, even more so than before. "Anduin! Watch out!" Brandwalden's anxious voice suddenly rang out beside him. Anduin turned his head to look, but before he could react, he was struck by lightning. To be precise, he was really struck by lightning. The thunderstorm vortex in the sky had been spinning faster and faster, gathering surging currents at its core. Without warning, a lightning bolt as thick as a bucket struck down, powerful and sinister. If this had happened when Anduin had just forged the sword, he might have had time to react. But after posing for a long time and finding that the thunderclouds ignored him, he had stopped paying attention to the sky. The sudden change in Annihilation had also distracted him. "Damn it! You're just playing dirty with me, aren't you?" Anduin cursed as the thick lightning struck him directly on the forehead. Although the current was immediately absorbed by Annihilation, it still gave him a shock, causing him to stagger. Anyone would be furious after such a sudden attack, and Anduin was no exception. He raised his head, his face contorted with anger, and glared fiercely at the clouds above, as if he could disperse them with his gaze. The thunderclouds, however, seemed unfazed. Thick plasma gathered at the core of the storm, and it began to bombard him with lightning bolts, one after another. Although Anduin was enraged by the attack, he still managed to keep his composure. Anduin couldn't afford to be negligent when he saw the scene unfolding before him. He quickly raised Anmi, the sword in his hand, like a lightning rod, attracting high-altitude currents. At that moment, the destroyer in his hand seemed to come alive. The blade vibrated and buzzed, as if it were reveling in the baptism of the lightning. Simultaneously, Anduin noticed that after Anmi received the lightning strike, layers of blue-silver plasma continuously overflowed from the sword. This plasma flowed directly down his arm and into his body. He felt the mana within him, which had been depleted by forging, gradually replenishing and becoming more active than before. Is this tempering and purifying the magic power in my body? Such a wonderful thing. Anduin marveled. After carefully sensing his body, he found that while his magic power reserve hadn't increased, its quality had become stronger, more concrete, and flexible. This newfound understanding of desolate thunder filled him with joy. Could this be the secret of the Thunderbird, chasing storms? The ability to transform magic power is truly marvelous. This discovery elated him, and his gaze at the thunderclouds in the sky shifted from anger to longing. This was like a miraculous elixir. Refining it further would significantly enhance his spellcasting strength. With this in mind, Anduin raised his hand even higher, eager to attract more thunder. However, the frequency of lightning strikes from the thunderclouds remained stable, occurring every few seconds, and even showed signs of decreasing in power and frequency. "That's not okay. I can't let you run away," Anduin muttered anxiously. The destroyer's rampage might be a one-time event, and who knew if such an opportunity would arise again. He also sensed a slight difference between the lightning strikes in the sky and the electricity used in daily life. These lightnings clearly contained faint magical power, likely attracted by the runes on Anmi. Seeing the power of the lightning diminishing, Anduin decided to take matters into his own hands. If the lightning wouldn't come to him, he would go to it. He flew up into the air with his long sword, aiming at the sky, and rushed straight towards the core of the storm where the lightning gathered. As he drilled into the core, the entire thundercloud surged violently. The extremely low clouds gradually rose, and the dark clouds, like thick ink, expanded visibly, soon spreading to the horizon. The centaurs and Hog, who were watching nearby, stared in stunned amazement as Anduin rushed towards the massive thundercloud. It was like witnessing a comet hitting the earth, a scene full of shock and awe. "Damn it! My lord has ascended to the sky against the lightning!" Hog couldn't help but exclaim. "Master won't come back, will he?" "It's truly shocking. Witnessing such a scene is worth a lifetime," another muttered. "And the halo of the seventh star of the Big Dipper can even pass through the clouds. Could it be Anduin?" End of this chapter. Chapter 422, Breaking the Army. At this time, the dark cloud that had originally gathered in a corner of the Forbidden Forest began to spread rapidly after being stimulated by Anduin's death. It even attracted the attention of the Muggle world. Hogwarts, which is adjacent to the Forbidden Forest, was now completely shrouded in these dark clouds. The little wizards, who were either resting or wandering around, looked up in surprise. Such a large area of black clouds was unusual for this season. To these young wizards, it was merely a dark cloud, nothing particularly alarming. However, many were concerned about the possibility of sudden rain and hurriedly ran back to the castle. The professors at the school, on the other hand, realized that this dark cloud might not be so simple. In the Hogwarts faculty lounge, several professors gathered in front of the French windows, looking up at the sky with serious expressions. "This dark cloud looks very unusual. I can feel the magic hidden in the air. What do you think, Professor Flitwick?" Professor McGonagall pushed the glasses on the bridge of her nose and muttered suspiciously, "It is indeed very abnormal. This is obviously not a natural phenomenon, and I can sense a familiar magic power spreading," Flitwick replied, frowning slightly with a trace of uncertainty. "A familiar feeling? Is it a wizard we know casting a spell? What could be their purpose? I don't sense any malice from it. It seems more like an experiment with magic." But after the dark clouds began to spread, the stars in the sky showed some abnormalities. Aurora Sinistra, the professor of astronomy, rubbed her chin thoughtfully. "An experiment? It doesn't seem like it. I've felt this familiarity within the academy before. It feels like it could be a student, but who?" Flitwick pondered, then turned to Sinistra. "What abnormalities are you referring to?" "The stars at the end of Ursa Major are flickering with an unknown meaning," Sinistra, who was proficient in astronomy, muttered. She then explained to the group, "The tail of Ursa Major is also known as the Big Dipper, and the last star is the seventh star of the Big Dipper. In the remote Oriental magic world, the seventh star of the Big Dipper is also called Breaking Army, symbolizing powerful destructive power. It represents the death squads and vanguards in the army, embodying the desire for victory, and was highly respected by ancient armies." "It doesn't sound like a good omen. Could it be that another war is about to happen?" Professor Flitwick's frown deepened as he looked at Sinistra worriedly. "Actually, the name of this star sounds ominous, but it is not entirely a bad omen in legend. The Eastern magic world often attributes the meaning of victory to this star. A vision involving this star could mean the birth of a great general or a powerful weapon," Sinistra explained, almost as if she were giving an astronomy lecture. "Your story is quite enlightening. If you ask me, you should be our divination professor. Compared to Trelawney, you at least provide more knowledge instead of scaring the students." Professor McGonagall couldn't help but comment on their divination professor. "You're joking. These are just some legends about constellations. I'm merely sharing them to lighten the mood. They are unproven and shouldn't be taken as factual knowledge," Sinistra replied modestly. "Are there any more details about the seventh star of the Big Dipper in legend? What kind of person does it point to?" Flitwick was still trying to place the familiar magic power he sensed. He pondered for a moment, trying to recall where he had felt it before. Professor Sinistra offered some inspiration. If you analyze a character's personality from the perspective of the stars, the seventh star of the Big Dipper represents qualities such as perseverance, innovation, resilience, bravery, discernment, quick response, and straightforwardness. It also embodies traits like stubbornness, rebelliousness, and a tendency to do things one's own way, she explained. Ned, tilting her head thoughtfully. Oh? Professor Flitwick listened intently to Professor Sinistra's description, and the image of a young wizard began to form in his mind. Meanwhile, in the principal's office on the 8th floor of the castle, others were equally concerned about the dark clouds gathering in the sky. Principal Dumbledore and Snape stood by the French windows, observing the ominous scene with great interest. "Do you feel it? The fierce magic in the air is almost as unbearable as a sharp knife at the throat," Snape remarked, his expression as gloomy as ever. "Don't be so pessimistic," Dumbledore replied cheerfully, clasping his hands over his stomach. "Although the sky is darkened, it doesn't necessarily mean something bad, and the sharp magic might not be aimed at us." "What? Do you know who created this dark cloud?" Snape asked, feeling the pressure of the ominous cloud, but noticing Dumbledore's lack of concern. "I have some guesses. The extremely strong magic of thunder and lightning is quite surprising," Dumbledore said, his eyes slightly narrowed as if he could see something within the clouds. "Elemental magic of thunder and lightning? This type of magic hasn't produced any powerful spells, and isn't water and fire your specialties?" Snape questioned, curling his lips in confusion. "Don't worry. I suspect we'll see some amazing thunder and lightning magic soon," Dumbledore chuckled, then turned his attention back to Snape. "The clouds will probably disperse soon. Would you like to try my new cockroach clusters? They taste quite good." "I'm not in the mood to eat that disgusting thing," Snape retorted coldly, focusing intently on Dumbledore. "Are you really going to clear Sirius Black's name? He was the chief culprit in Lily's death. What kind of spell has he cast on you to make you believe a lunatic's words?" "No," Dumbledore replied sternly. "I trust my own judgment. Someone else betrayed Lily. After failing to find that crucial address in Sirius' mind, I became convinced he wasn't the true culprit." "You've been hating the wrong man, Severus." End of this chapter. Chapter 423. The Cane. "Have I hated the wrong person? I think you are the old fool. Back then, you were the one who told me in every possible way that it was that bastard Sirius who betrayed Lily. Now you are going to go back on your word? I don't believe it." Snape's voice was filled with bitterness and disbelief as he confronted Dumbledore. The annoying face of Sirius Black flashed in his mind, fueling his anger. "Everyone makes mistakes, and I am no exception. If you truly want to avenge Lily, you should focus your efforts on finding the escaped Peter Pettigrew. He is the true secret keeper," Dumbledore said, rubbing his temples in frustration. Many wizards, including members of the Order of Merlin, found it hard to believe the truth. Despite Dumbledore's efforts, the evidence was too weak to convince them. "Using a dead person as a scapegoat, is that what you bastards do?" Snape sneered, his doubts still lingering. He turned and walked away, leaving Dumbledore to sigh and gaze out the window at the clouds. "Anduin, although Budnor is willing to trust you unreservedly, how far can you go?" Dumbledore murmured to himself, his thoughts drifting. Meanwhile, in Britain, other creatures were also concerned about the thunderclouds. At Scamander House, Newt was tending to the magical creatures in his indoor park when he heard a high-pitched bird song. He hurried out to find the Thunderbird, and he now fully recovered and healthy, soaring into the air with electric arcs dancing around its body. The bird was calling loudly towards the north. "What's going on? Why is the Thunderbird so excited?" Newt wondered, rushing towards the bird. The Thunderbird was not only emotional, but also flapping its wings furiously, trying to fly north. Newt was alarmed. The walls were protected by powerful magic, part of an extensive magical circle. If the Thunderbird broke through, it could be injured, or the magic circle could be damaged. Without hesitation, Newt used his travel water bottle to control the Thunderbird, dousing it with magical water and bringing it back to the ground. Despite his efforts to calm it, the Thunderbird remained agitated, leaving Newt at a loss. Unbeknownst to Newt, Anduin's use of lightning to temper his body had amplified the spiritual connection between him and the Thunderbird. The bird sensed the lightning storm and instinctively wanted to chase it. Unfortunately, the distance between southern England and the Forbidden Forest in the north was too great. Newt, unable to sense the storm, struggled to control the Thunderbird. After a tense half-hour, the Thunderbird finally calmed down. Meanwhile, the thunderstorm vortex above the Centaur camp began to change. The rolling clouds slowed, and the flashing lightning grew thinner. The centaurs on the mountaintop had been watching the sky, captivated by the rare sight. "Look, what's that?" Firenze, the tribe's archer with keen eyesight, pointed to the sky, his voice filled with wonder. "Is that a figure? That's a person." Hogg squinted, trying to make out the shape descending from the clouds. He was uncertain because the figure was shrouded in mist and lightning, making it hard to discern. At this moment, Anduin appeared very different from the figure who had previously soared into the sky. A blue and silver figure slowly descended from above. His hair stood on end, reminiscent of a Super Saiyan, and was completely dyed light blue. The clothes on his body seemed to be coated with a layer of silver paint, giving off a fluorescent glow. Electric light danced around him, as if dozens of silver snakes were flying about. His silver pupils added to the impression of a god descending to earth. As he gradually descended, the extraordinary vision surrounding him slowly faded, revealing the Anduin everyone was familiar with. However, despite his restored appearance, there was an undeniable change in him. His eyes, once a pair of determined and sharp black pupils, now had a faint circle of silver threads within them, giving off a mysterious and slightly unsettling aura. It felt as if a ferocious beast was targeting them, yet Anduin's overall demeanor remained low-key and introverted. This strange dissonance made everyone feel extremely uncomfortable. "My lord, are you all right?" Hogg asked, stammering as he looked at the astonishingly powerful Anduin. "It's okay. I'm fine. In fact, I've never felt better," Anduin replied as he slowly landed on the ground. He then lifted the annier in his hand and lightly flicked his fingertips on the blade, causing a burst of electric sparks and a crisp ding sound. A group of centaurs, seeing that he was safe and sound, surrounded him. The young centaurs looked at Anduin with awe and adoration in their eyes. "Anduin, after such a big battle, your holy artifact is finally complete. Just being born, it can cause such amazing power. It must be extremely powerful," Brandvarden said sincerely, looking at Anduin. "This also depends on your help. Without your superb skills, we couldn't have forged such a masterpiece. The current destroyer is far from being called a holy artifact. It still has a long way to go," Anduin replied, in a good mood, with a smile on his face. The centaurs and Hogg couldn't help but lean forward to carefully observe the long sword in Anduin's hand. Hogg even reached out to touch it, but was soon pricked by the electric arc, excited by the sword. After letting everyone admire the sword for a while, Anduin held the long sword upside down and thought for a moment. The long sword instantly transformed into a silver cane, which he held in his palm. As his main equipment in the future, it was natural to carry it with him, but a sword on his back was too conspicuous. A walking stick was much more convenient. After finishing all this, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dispersed. Anduin helped everyone restore the scene before leaving the mountaintop. End of this chapter. Chapter 424, Spellcasting Mutation. After completing the casting of Annihilation, Anduin felt a sense of fulfillment. Ever since he acquired the Dragonheart Tendon in his 3rd year, he had been planning to craft this sword. When he practiced martial arts, his favorite and most proficient weapon was the longsword, and now he was finally satisfied. In the Thundercloud, Anduin reaped significant benefits. After rushing into the cloud, he relentlessly chased lightning, much like a thunderbird born from wild thunder. The thundercloud, in an attempt to dodge his pursuit, continued to spread. Anduin ended up traveling a considerable distance in the sky, even passing over Hogwarts at one point. Eventually, he managed to attract enough thunder with the help of Destroyer, which caused a transformation in his magical power. The most noticeable change was in his spell-casting intensity. With his mental strength and willpower, if his spell-casting intensity was initially at 1, after being tempered by thunder, it rose to at least 1.1, possibly even close to 1.2. While an increase of 0.1 might seem minor, it was significant given Anduin's already high spellcasting strength. If tested on a humanoid target, his spellcasting strength would now hit a value of over 400, possibly close to 500. He had not seen such improvement in over a year, as spellcasting strength depends on willpower and emotional effects. After reaching a bottleneck, only violent emotional fluctuations could lead to a breakthrough. Now, breaking through 500 was no longer an issue, and it might even be close to 600. He wasn't sure if the humanoid target he created could withstand such extreme strength spells. Additionally, Anduin noticed that his physique had also changed. This could be due to the transformation in his magical power or the effect of thunder tempering. He felt stronger, more physically fit, and his reaction speed had improved. While he might not be as exaggeratedly strong as Hagrid, compared to normal humans, he was already superhuman. After finishing his business at the Centaur camp, Anduin returned to Diagon Alley and discovered that his spells seemed to be influenced by the thunder. During the apparition process, he could feel that the positioning speed had become faster, and the sense of oppression when traveling through space had reduced significantly. He even realized that he could finally control the direction of movement and landing point, something he had always wanted to master as an advanced apparition technique. Moreover, he found that the wild thunder within him affected his apparition. While others' apparition would turn into a puff of smoke in the air, his apparition transformed into a laser-like electric current, resembling a ball of lightning flying through the air. Shaltair and Chi-Chi at the Silver Flash Trading Company watched in astonishment as a flash of lightning appeared in the void, and Anduin suddenly materialized in front of them. Hog, who was being supported by Anduin, had his hair standing on end, as if charged with static electricity. Shaltair and Chi-Chi were shocked. How could so much change in just 2 days? Hog had turned into a fried dog, and Anduin's apparition now involved lightning. My lord, although this new apparition technique feels much more comfortable and faster, it electrifies me when not in use, Hog said, looking at his upright hair with a tearful expression. Sorry, I'm still not proficient in using this new technique I just mastered, Anduin apologized. He had just discovered that his apparition had mutated, and although it was more efficient, it came with unexpected side effects. Shaltair, who is proficient in art, is very sensitive to details. She noticed the changes in Anduin immediately. My lord, what are you doing here? Why do I feel that your whole demeanor has changed? Not just your magic, but even your temperament and tastes seem different. At the same time, Shaltair also stared at Hog, who was standing next to Anduin. And you, how come you have become so cute after just a few days? A long hair is quite interesting. She leaned forward and stroked Hog's back, noting how good his fur felt. Touch, touch, what are you touching, you smelly bat? Don't infect me with lice, I'll bite you to death. Hog's fur, already ruffled, stood on end even more after Shaltair's touch. He bared his teeth and claws at her, ready to fight. The pair of enemies started bickering, but Anduin quickly intervened and pulled them apart. Then, Shaltair and Kiki learned about the recent events from the ever-talkative Hog. My lord, are you in such a hurry to build weapons to deal with Thunderbirds? Kiki asked, knowing that Anduin had plans to create weapons, but it seemed much earlier than expected. That's right, Anduin nodded with a sneer. In 2 months, I'm going to Egypt. On one hand, I'm preparing to participate in the International Alchemy Conference, and on the other, I'm going to deal with the Thunderbird. Unfortunately, there should be other silver spear guns in Egypt, and at least 1 spear, because our previous preparations were not enough. Since it's the opponent's silver spear, why don't you ask the local Ministry of Magic for help? I heard they will also send special personnel to the conference, Shaltair suggested, clearly hating the smugglers and eager to confront them. Killing them is just a process, not the ultimate goal, Anduin replied with a sneer. I have a plan, but it must be kept absolutely confidential. No one should know that I'm actually going to deal with the silver spears, not even the Ministry of Magic. Oh, what's the secret? We can't even know it? Hog's eyes lit up with curiosity. I can't reveal it until it succeeds. You'll know then. Anduin shook his head slightly. He then looked at Hog. I will take you on the trip to Egypt, so in these 2 months you need to step up your recovery training and get familiar with the new tactical vest. Hogg, excited at the prospect of another adventure, responded eagerly. Yes, my lord. Don't worry, Hogg will not let you down. Shaltir, feeling left out, pouted. My lord, why do you always take Hogg and not me? Your identity is quite special. Bringing a vampire into Egypt could easily offend the Ministry of Magic. Also, your aversion to sunlight would delay our actions. Once we test the tactical suit that can protect you from the sun, I'll consider taking you along, Anduin comforted her with a chuckle. End of this chapter. Chapter 425, Cairo. 2 months later, at the Ministry of Magic, several well-dressed wizards gathered in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, some carrying large and small bags beside them. Mevis, why hasn't Anduin arrived yet? Today is the day we go to Egypt. He must not have forgotten, Vanessa said eagerly. Although she had graduated several years ago, she still retained a trace of innocence and was visibly excited. Mevis, who was named by Vanessa, took out a beautiful watch that Anduin had given her for Christmas. She opened it, glanced at the time, and then looked at Vanessa with a hint of exasperation. The time we agreed on hasn't arrived yet. What are you in such a hurry for? I'm not in a hurry, just a little excited. After all, this is my first time going abroad. I wonder how different Cairo is from the UK, Vanessa replied. She then turned to another lady beside her. Azalea, you've traveled in Europe before. Are the living habits there very different from ours? It's okay. Azalea smiled slightly at Vanessa. I only stayed in France for a while. The wizards there didn't surprise us much, except for the language, but the French food is very good. I've never been to Cairo, so I can't comment. Stop chatting, Anduin is here. We should be ready to go anytime, Director Bianca reminded them. The group turned to look at the entrance of the main hall. A man in a black formal suit with silver trim, a soft felt hat on his head, and a monocle pinned in his eye socket walked towards them. He carried a suitcase in one hand and a cane in the other. It was Anduin, accompanied by a short husky in a black vest, which was the shrunken Hogg. Sorry for keeping you waiting, Anduin said as he approached, setting down his suitcase and slightly pressing the top hat on his head. He then looked at Bianca. I didn't expect you to lead the team to this conference. The timing is just right. We should say we came too early. Some people were urging us desperately early in the morning, Bianca said, glancing at Vanessa before turning back to Anduin. To be honest, for us, participating in the International Alchemy Conference is nothing more than a public-funded trip. The real protagonist is you. I heard your works won awards this year. It's just good luck, Anduin replied modestly. His tracking glasses had indeed won the Gold Award for pioneering contributions at the conference, something Burns had informed him about in advance. He then glanced at his colleagues from the Ministry of Magic. Director Bianca was the team leader. The International Alchemy Conference was a grand gathering of alchemists from around the world, and the Alchemy Research Center sent out invitations to officials. It was customary for the Ministry of Magic to send a director-level person to lead the team, and Azalea, as Bianca's secretary, naturally accompanied them. Anduin had only learned about this from her a few days ago, suggesting that the dispatch was quite random. Apart from Bianca and Azalea, Mevis and Vanessa, as aurors, were the accompanying security personnel. However, these two security guards looked more like they were going on a trip, given the large bags of luggage around them. There were also 2 alchemists from the ministry, the same ones who had supervised Anduin when he was repairing the alchemy room. Although they were somewhat inferior, as rare professionals in the ministry, such learning opportunities were invaluable to them. Now that everyone is here, let's get ready to go, Bianca said, taking out a thick hemp rope that was 3 to 4 meters long. Everyone grabbed the port key. Cairo should have arranged people to wait for us. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately stretched out their hands to grab the port key. Bianca took out a hemp rope, and even Hogg jumped into the air, biting the rope with his mouth wide open. Suddenly, everyone felt dizzy, as if they were thrown into the sky, and then fell rapidly. When they regained their senses, the group of 7 found themselves in an alley. The stone walls of the Suro, Unding houses were thick and earthy yellow, and the air had changed from the humidity of the UK to a dry aridness. Looking up, they saw buildings that matched the color of the walls, with flat roofs, spires, and domes, all appearing as if they were molded from the earth itself. The edge of the blue sky had a slight yellow tint, possibly due to the wind and sand. Ugh! Why is the port key bumpier than before? I feel like my intestines are squeezed together. Vanessa groaned as she landed, quickly supporting herself against a low wall and vomiting. Among the group, only Bianca, Mavis, and Anduin looked calm, while the others had pained expressions. Vanessa, however, reacted the most violently. It's a long way from the UK, so the process is naturally uncomfortable. Didn't I tell you to eat less this morning? Mavis frowned in disgust, pinching her nose as she scolded Vanessa. It seems your journey was not pleasant. A familiar voice suddenly interrupted as they were adjusting to their new surroundings. Everyone turned to see Edgar Burns, the elder brother of Amelia, director of the Department of Legal Enforcement, and Anduin's alchemy mentor, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Burns was dressed in a white robe typical of the Arab world, with a large turban and sandals, looking like an Arab sheikh. He smiled warmly at the group. Professor Burns? Edgar? Mr. Burns. The group greeted him with smiles, especially Anduin, who hadn't seen his mentor in almost 5 years. Welcome to Cairo, Burns said, approaching with a smile. I learned about your itinerary from the Egyptian Ministry of Magic, so I volunteered to come here to welcome you. How are you? Edgar, I didn't expect to see you as soon as we arrived. It's really great, Bianca said, laughing as she hugged Burns. They looked at each other with a mix of familiarity and surprise. I haven't seen you for a few years, but you haven't changed much. That big beard is still as piercing as ever. But why are you dressed like this? I almost didn't recognize you, Bianca remarked. I can't help it. It's too hot here, so I had to follow the local customs and dress like the locals, Burns replied with a laugh. End of this chapter. Chapter 426. The Alchemist's Paradise. Burns turned his head to look at Anduin again. It's been a long time, Anduin. I almost didn't recognize you after all these years. I've just grown taller, but I'm still as energetic as ever, Professor, Anduin replied with a smile. Don't call me Professor. I've been away from Hogwarts for many years, and you're an adult now. Just call me Edgar, Burns said, patting Anduin appreciatively on the shoulder. After all, you were my teacher. Even after graduation, I'll call you Mr. Burns, Anduin replied politely. Burns nodded indifferently and then noticed the little husky at Anduin's feet. Hey, why did you bring a dog with you when you went abroad? It looks quite cute. Burns knelt down to scratch Hog's head, but the dog quickly dodged nimbly. Hog didn't want to be touched by this bearded old man. I'm sorry, Hog has a bad temper. If I don't take him with me, the furniture at home would probably be bitten to pieces, Anduin said helplessly, looking at the uncooperative Hog. He nudged the dog with his foot, and Hog reluctantly leaned his head down, allowing Burns to pet him for a while. You've traveled a long way, and you probably don't feel well. I'd better take you to your residence first, Burns said seriously after playing with Hog for a bit. He then led the way out of the alley. Once they left the alley, the surroundings suddenly became clear. The area was bustling with pedestrians, all of whom were wizards. Most were dressed in Arabic attire similar to Burns, while others wore wizard robes with exotic colors. Not far away, a group of black wizards were bare-chested, with necklaces of animal teeth hanging around their necks. This is the most prosperous wizard gathering area in Cairo, called Kara Black Bazaar. It's similar to Diagon Alley in the UK. However, because the International Alchemy Conference is being held, there are many foreign wizards visiting recently. After you settle down, you can come here and have a good time, Burns explained, spreading his hands. It was only then that everyone realized why the Portkey's appearance location was arranged in the city. Generally, to avoid being discovered by muggles, wizards would choose remote suburbs or no man's land for such appearances. It turned out that this was a wizard enclave. After Burns' introduction, everyone, including Anduin, looked around excitedly. Like Diagon Alley, it was a bustling pedestrian street, but with an Arabian architectural style. The buildings were generally not high, with walls and windows featuring exquisite hollow patterns, and the ground paved with earth bricks. Unlike Diagon Alley, the shops here resembled street stalls rather than houses. Each stall was lifted by a wooden or stone platform, separated by beautifully crafted blankets, or sometimes just gaps indicating different booths. Above the stalls, Arab shamans usually held a huge umbrella or spread a white sackcloth to keep out the sun. Each booth had a wizard sitting barefoot on a flying carpet, ready to greet guests. In the middle of the street was a circular open-air square. The roads in the square were arranged in an arc-shaped row of various stalls. From above, it looked like a concentric circle penetrated by a road in the middle. These stalls sold a variety of items, including flying carpets, stacked in piles of more than a dozen pieces. In the bustling market, blankets floated in the air, stacked as high as 1 or 2 floors, creating a spectacular sight. Vendors selling weather blankets displayed them like curtains, unfurling each one and draping them around their booths. These blankets represented various weather conditions: the cold air of winter, the heat waves of summer, and thunderstorms with lightning and thunder. The vivid displays were quite striking. Service stores, such as bars, restaurants, and cold drink shops, were situated in the buildings behind the stalls. Naturally, in a wizard gathering area like this, there was a bank operated by goblins. On one side of the square market stood a 3-story dome-ed building, though the dome of this goblin bank was noticeably crooked. This reminded Anduin of the crooked Gringotts in Diagon Alley, making him ponder the unpredictable aesthetics of goblins. The square market was teeming with vendors selling herbs, potions, wizard costumes, utensils, and even animals. These small vendors laid out their goods directly on the ground, creating a dazzling and eye-catching display. However, this selling method had a downside. The mingling smells of various herbs and animals created a strange and somewhat unpleasant odor, which was a bit overwhelming for newcomers. As Anduin carefully explored the market, he noticed an abundance of stalls selling alchemy props, with many specializing in specific items. Nearly half of the stalls on the entire street were dedicated to alchemy. In addition to regionally representative items like flying carpets and weather carpets, there were booths specializing in speculum glasses, magic toys, magic cameras, and even magic kitchen utensils. One booth in particular caught his eye. It was filled with all kinds of alchemy carving knives, indicating it was an alchemist prop store. The store seemed to be doing brisk business, much better than what he had seen in the UK. He recalled visiting a magic prop store in Hogsmeade, where a set of basic alchemy carving knives was covered in dust. This market felt like an alchemist's paradise, and Anduin couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Seeing these alchemy stalls ignited Anduin's desire to shop, especially at the carving knife stall. The carving knife he currently used was bought by Toburns and hadn't been replaced for several years. However, he knew he couldn't act too hastily. Stopping now would be impolite and might cause him to fall behind. With deep reluctance, Anduin followed Burns out of the Kara Black Bazaar. The way of connecting the Muggle area to the Wizard's Market here was different from Diagon Alley. After passing through a circular arch at the end of the road, they immediately exited the Wizard's Market. Anduin could sense a strong magical reaction around the arch. The confusion and shielding spells in place were more than twice as strong as those at the Leaky Cauldron, which likely explained why they could open the door so blatantly. He knew that the Leaky Cauldron occasionally let a few muggles slip through. End of this chapter. Chapter 427. Martin, Mr. Bones, why did we leave the Kara Black Market? I saw a hotel in the market. Do we really have to stay in the Muggle community? Maywise asked, looking at Bones with a puzzled expression. I can't help it, Bones replied. Too many people come to each international alchemy conference. The hotels in the market are not enough to accommodate everyone, especially those who live in Egypt, let alone entertain foreign participants. Bones knew it was Maywise's first time attending the conference, so he explained in detail. For every alchemy conference, to avoid conflicts, the Egyptian Ministry of Magic arranges additional accommodations outside the market for foreign participants. This is a common practice. The place we're going to isn't entirely a Muggle site. At least the owner isn't. You mean Martin? His tavern hasn't closed down after all these years, Bianca said, clearly familiar with the place, and joked with a teasing expression. Yeah, Every time I ask him why he always accepts jobs from the Egyptian Ministry of Magic, he says, "I can't just do muggle business. I have to earn galleons," Bones said, frowning slightly. "Ha ha ha, that guy is still the same after all these years," Bianca laughed, seeing Bones's expression. "Martin, is he the owner of the place we're staying at? What's special about him?" Mayways asked, curious about the man they were discussing. "He's a poor man who wants to hide in the muggle world like a hermit, but can't completely give up his wizard status," Bianca chuckled and shook her head. Then she looked at the others with a serious face. "But be careful. That guy can be dangerous when he goes crazy, so don't provoke him." "A poor guy? Why does this man named Martin want to give up his status as a wizard?" Anduin raised his eyebrows, feeling a bit puzzled. But before he could think further, Bones led the group into a 5-story muggle tavern. It was called a tavern, but it was actually similar to the Leaky Cauldron, offering both food and guest rooms. The interior of the tavern was decorated in Arabian colors. It was very spacious, with high ceilings and windows adorned with intricate hollow patterns. The tavern was crowded with people, all wizards wearing robes or exotic costumes. They glanced at Bones and the others casually but quickly lost interest. Bones led the group to the counter, where a tall, thin, middle-aged man with a gloomy expression stood. He wore a pendant resembling a triangular eye with a vertical line in the middle of the pupil, a symbol Anduin recognized as the Deathly Hallows. "Martin, the British representatives are here. There are 7 of us. Can you arrange rooms?" Bones greeted him familiarly. Martin, the tavern owner, looked at Bones coldly. "Why is there a dog? Do you think my place isn't messy enough? I don't accept animals here." "Are you blind? I clearly saw the Ugandan representative over there with a black panther," Bianca retorted, pointing at the black panther at the next table. "It's you. Why haven't you died after all these years?" Martin rolled his eyes at Bianca. "And I think you're blind. Didn't you realize that the Black Panther is an animagus? I wonder how you managed to become the head of the Ministry of Magic with your level of observation." Okay. Bones interjected, seeing that Bianca was about to lose her temper. "Martin, please be accommodating. There are many wizards with owls. 1 dog is no big deal. Owls don't shit and pee on my carpet. Can this dog promise the same? And I don't provide dog food here," Martin replied curtly. Martin seemed to be in a foul mood, glaring at everyone as if he had taken gunpowder in his mouth. "Mr. Martin, my dog won't cause you any trouble, I assure you. I can also take care of its food myself," Anduin said, stepping forward to placate him. He had been staying here for a few days and didn't want to sour his relationship with his host. "My name is Grenville. You should call me Mr. Grenville," Martin corrected Anduin sharply. "If your dog dares to damage anything, you'll have to pay triple the compensation in galleons." "No problem. Everything will be as you say," Anduin agreed quickly, thinking it was better to avoid conflict. "All right, here are the keys to 3 rooms. 2 of them are suites that can accommodate 3 people each. You can allocate them as you see fit," Martin said, tossing the keys to Anduin. Bianca, who had been watching the exchange, curled her lips in annoyance. "Why have you become so mercenary after spending time with muggles?" she muttered, but Martin just rolled his eyes and ignored her. After receiving the keys, Bianca turned to the group. "You 3 ladies will share 1 room. Anduin, you'll have a room to yourself, and the remaining room will be for me and the 2 alchemists." The 2 alchemists, who had been silent until now, exchanged helpless glances. It was good news to be rooming with the leader. Bianca continued with the arrangements. "In 2 days, there will be an official alchemy conference lasting 3 days. Tomorrow night, there will be a dinner organized by the Egyptian Ministry of Magic. Anduin and I have been invited, so make sure to attend on time. The rest of the time, you are free to do as you please." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with excitement. Clearly, she saw this trip to Egypt as a chance for tourism, as she wouldn't be involved in most of the official events. She was probably already planning her sightseeing. As they headed to their respective rooms, Burns followed Anduin into his. "Anduin, I didn't expect your alchemy skills to have advanced so much over the years. Even though I'm in Egypt, I often see your papers published. I heard you opened your own alchemy firm in Diagon Alley, and even the Ministry of Magic is one of your clients. That's remarkable." Anduin's room, though a single, was quite spacious. After sitting on the sofa, Burns gestured for Anduin to join him. "It all depends on your guidance, Professor. Without it, I might not have known what alchemy is," Anduin said, taking out a bottle of flame whiskey from his space ring and pouring a glass for Burns. End of this chapter. Chapter 428, Another Silver Spear. At the banquet tomorrow night, I will introduce you to a few local alchemy masters. They are very interested in your work. Getting in touch with them may advance your alchemy skills further. After all, I am not a professional alchemist," Burns said casually after taking a sip of whiskey. "Thank you for your support," Anduin replied, respecting his mentor who had always been there for him. "I have also been corresponding with several alchemists in Cairo and have long wanted to meet them in person." Burns nodded with satisfaction. "By the way, you should spend some time at the Kalahai Bazaar when you have free time over the next few days. The bookstore there sells many alchemy-related books. This place is at the forefront of alchemy, so there's a lot of up-to-date information." "I'm very interested in Kalahai," Anduin said, nodding. He then asked curiously, "Professor Burns, besides participating in the conference, I actually want to expand my alchemy business here. What are the conditions for selling alchemy products?" "Oh, I didn't expect your ambition to be so great," Burns laughed. "You should have seen it today. Most of the markets here are street stalls. If you're really interested in doing business, you can rent a booth to try it out." "Can the stalls over there be rented at will?" Anduin's eyes lit up. He didn't know much about the situation here, but there were significant restrictions on doing alchemy business in the UK, requiring Ministry of Magic approval. The external stalls in the entire Karahi Bazaar are managed by the Egyptian Alchemy Research Center in conjunction with the Egyptian Ministry of Magic. The merchants don't own the property rights, so all the stalls are rented. Some prime locations are rented long-term by alchemists to sell their products, but many short-term rental stalls are available. If you're interested, you can apply at the Alchemy Research Center inside Karahai Bazaar. The location may not be prime, but it's not too difficult to get a spot. Additionally, the category management of alchemy props is quite loose here. As long as they aren't cursed items, even black magic props can be sold. If your products are popular, many local merchants will likely want to collaborate with you and represent your products. So that's the case. The Alchemy Research Center in Egypt must be quite wealthy, Anduin remarked, surprised that it was feasible. Naturally, the study of alchemy itself is very resource-intensive, and all master alchemists are essentially made of gold galleons, Burns laughed. "Do you have any trusted local friends who might be willing to represent my products?" Anduin asked. If his products could open up the market in Egypt, he had the opportunity to expand throughout Europe. "Yes," Burns nodded, "but although they have a good impression of you, they are also very realistic. If your products don't impress them, they won't be interested in talking to you." "I understand," Anduin nodded. He already had a preliminary understanding of the environment in Egypt. Unlike the strict rules in Britain, here they valued strength, including wealth and technology. As a pragmatist, Anduin didn't dislike such an ecosystem. Afterwards, the teacher and student chatted about various topics, and Burns introduced Anduin to the local customs before leaving his room. Once alone, Anduin didn't hurry to go out for a stroll. He waited silently in his room until, after a while, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Azalea came into view. "How's it going? Have you connected with Thunderbird?" Anduin asked immediately after letting Azalea into the room. "I have already contacted him. He asked me to meet tonight. What should I do?" Azalea inquired. Anduin knew he had to deal with the Thunderbird, and his mission this time was to ensure everything went smoothly. "I've already pinpointed the Thunderbird's location using the Iseron mask, but he's currently in Cairo's urban area, making it inconvenient for me to act. Tonight, when you meet Heth, your first task is to determine the purpose of his trip to Egypt. He's conceited, so he might not reveal much, but gather whatever information you can. Secondly, you need to lure the Thunderbird out of the city, preferably to a deserted area. If you can't manage that immediately, use me as bait and fabricate whatever story you need." Anduin had located the Thunderbird through Iseron's mask earlier, but the Thunderbird was near Karahai at the time. Additionally, there was another contact from Izuran's network nearby. Recalling Azalea's introduction to the Silver Lance, Anduin suspected this person might be Izuran's former superior, the Sphinx. Interestingly, this individual was currently inside the Kara Black Bazaar, indicating a special status. Lure him out of the city? Azalea asked, puzzled. Are you really planning to handle him alone? Isn't that too risky? Director Bianca and Mr. Burns are here, and May Weiss and I are also combat ready. If we contact the local Ministry of Magic, we could have even more manpower. Why not just arrest him together? Azalea couldn't understand why Anduin insisted on complicating matters when they had the advantage in numbers. The opponent was formidable, and any mistake could be troublesome. Was Anduin, like the Thunderbird, an old-fashioned warrior who preferred solo combat? I have my reasons, and you don't need to worry about me. I need to eliminate the Thunderbird discreetly, without anyone else knowing about his existence or movements. Just follow my instructions. Understood? Anduin said, smirking without further explanation. Yes, my lord, Azalea replied obediently, though still confused. After sending Azalea away, Anduin packed his bags and set off for the Kara Black Bazaar. He had to deal with the Thunderbird and attend to his own business. Upon returning to the Karahai Bazaar, Anduin didn't head directly to the alchemy stalls or the rental booths of the Alchemy Research Center. Instead, he followed the tracker from Izuran's mask to locate the second contact in Egypt. This person was likely the head of the Egyptian branch of the Silver Spear. Chapter 429, Sebastian. Following the tracker, Anduin navigated through the bustling Karahai Bazaar with a clear goal in mind. However, when he finally arrived at the building indicated by the tracker, he was slightly taken aback. The structure before him was square, topped with an Arabic-style onion-shaped dome in the center, flanked by two tall minarets on either side, resembling a typical Arab mosque. What surprised Anduin even more was the sign above the entrance. This was the Alchemy Research Center he had planned to visit later. Could it be that Sphinx is also an alchemist and a member of this research center? Anduin rechecked the tracker in his hand. After confirming its accuracy, he walked into the ornately decorated building, his mind racing with thoughts. The interior of the research center was even more astonishing. The space had been expanded using the untraceable stretching curse, making the interior area vast and exaggerated. The marble-lined floors, walls, and ceilings adorned with exquisite murals, and the golden oil lamps floating above for lighting all exuded luxury. It was a place of carved beams and painted buildings. This place is incredibly opulent, Anduin thought, marveling at the sight. The magic patterns visible on the ground and walls were far more intricate than anything he had seen in his own alchemy room. Hello, how can I help you? A beautiful staff member in an Arabian robe approached Anduin. A flying carpet floated beside her, carrying 7 or 8 cups of drinks in various colors. I'm here to inquire about renting a market stall, Anduin replied, masking his true intentions. He looked around as if admiring the scenery and smiled at the staff member. Of course, please follow me. If you would like something to drink, feel free to help yourself, the staff member said politely, leading Anduin to a nearby seating area that resembled a VIP lounge in a bank. Shortly after, a local wizard approached Anduin with a stack of documents. Hi, I'm Ilihan Hadrick from the Research Center. I'm pleased to serve you. You don't seem like a local wizard from Cairo. Are you here to participate in the alchemy conference? Ilihan, who appeared to be a lobby manager, asked tentatively after glancing at Anduin. Yes, I'm a member of the British delegation. I want to rent a temporary booth in the market to see if my alchemy products are suitable for the market here. Anduin responded fluently, though his eyes continued to wander around the room. His upgraded tracker was highly accurate, and he hoped to spot the silver spear if it appeared. Although Anduin's constant glancing around might have seemed odd, Ilihan didn't find it strange. Many visiting wizards were often awestruck by the research center's lavish decor and naturally curious. However, Ilihan pondered Anduin's words. A British alchemist? Britain was often referred to as an alchemy desert, with Dumbledore being the only well-known master alchemist. He had never heard of other British alchemists. Nevertheless, As a professional research center employee, Ilihan maintained a courteous demeanor. No problem. You just need to complete a simple registration procedure at the research center, and then you can apply. This International Alchemy Congress has a sales point specifically set up for foreigners. There are two options, one located in a larger space near the entrance, priced at 3 galleons per day, and another smaller space at half the price. Ilihan explained quite professionally. The former is located at the back, and the price is 1 galleon a day. 3 galleons a day just for renting out the booth? Anduin was taken aback. Although he had a lot of money now, the price still surprised him. He withdrew his gaze from looking around and turned to Ilihan with some surprise. Don't worry, it's not too expensive, Ilihan reassured him, noticing Anduin's reaction. The location of the sales point we've arranged is quite good, directly connected to the main square. Additionally, there are many wizards visiting Carahene for the recent conference, both local and foreign. So, many businessmen choose this time to promote their products. This is not only a good opportunity for Egypt, but also a chance to showcase products to wizards from all over the world. Although the price may seem high, many people still lease booths every day. Anduin nodded in approval after hearing this. He knew that the rent of 3 galleons a day was a premium and possibly a ripoff, but if it allowed him to showcase his products to wizards worldwide, it was worth it. The crowd he saw in the Karahe Bazaar that morning was quite dense, at least 10 times more than in Diagon Alley. He nodded lightly. Okay, I'll rent a large-scale booth for 2 days, and I want it now, Anduin decided. He knew that Karahe had more people at night than during the day, and he didn't have much time to stay. He wasn't going to worry about losing half a day of leasing. All right, Ilihan responded, surprised at the young man's wealth. He immediately began assisting Anduin with the formalities. However, halfway through the process, Anduin's attention was suddenly drawn to a figure passing through the lobby not far away. He checked the tracker in his hand to confirm the target. Ilihan, do you know that person, the one with the black turban on his head? Anduin asked, patting Ilihan, who was helping him fill out the form and pointing at the figure not far away. Ilihan looked up and recognized the person. Oh, you're talking about Mr. Sebastian. He is the honorary chairman of the research center and a senior researcher of spells. Why? Do you know him? Ah, he just looks familiar, as if I've seen him somewhere before, Anduin responded casually. This gentleman's surname is Sebastian? Is he a foreigner? Yes, Mr. Reich. Sebastian is originally from Germany, but he has been working as a researcher in Egypt for several years. He was awarded the title of honorary chairman by the research center for recovering 3 ancient spells. He is a well-known figure in the research center and an expert in spells, Ilihan explained casually. End of this chapter. Chapter 430, Setting Up a Stall. The Sebastian that Anduin valued was the Egyptian silver spear that he had located through the tracker. Based on the status and identity of the other party, it was almost certain that this was the person in charge of the silver spear in Egypt, known as Sphinx. The concealed identity is actually a senior researcher in the research center. It seems that it might be a bit troublesome to deal with. Let's see if this person will meet Thunderbird first, so as not to cause trouble, Anduin thought to himself. He then picked up the little husky, Hog, who was always by his side. Whispering a few words in Hog's ear, he also stuffed a tracker resembling a compass into the dog's vest pocket. With a quick motion, he let Hog slip away and run off. On the other side, with the help of Yili Khan, the procedures for renting the booth were quickly completed. Hog was already helping to keep an eye on the silver spear. Next, Anduin planned to set up his stall while remotely monitoring the silver spear with Hog's assistance. Under Yili Khan's guidance, Anduin quickly found his booth. The street was exactly as described, with a prime location and a high flow of people. However, there were many stalls on both sides of the street, all set up by foreign wizards. There were French stalls selling beauty potions and stalls selling African specialty herbs, making it look like an exhibition of exotic goods. Because many people had rented booths ahead of him, Anduin's position was already in the middle and back. But he didn't mind too much. He was just playing for fun, and even the back position was crowded with people. After arriving at his spot, Anduin immediately opened the suitcase in his hand. This was a new space prop he had made. Although he had studied with Scamander for a long time, he couldn't even take a look at Newt's suitcase. By referring to the untraceable stretching magic circle in the magical zoo area, he had produced a piece of equipment with a huge capacity. He took out the magic phonograph, magic lamp, humanoid target, and various amulets from the suitcase one after another. As a qualified profiteer now, Anduin knew that too many complicated products were not conducive to product display. It was only necessary to launch several products with the highest sales volume in the firm, open the market first to lock in customers and increase stickiness. Anduin waved his hand, and soon various products flew out one after another. He divided his booth into mats and displayed different kinds of props. The magic lamp and the magic phonograph were placed in the front 2 boxes, while the back 2 boxes held 5 humanoid targets of different styles. Dozens of beautifully crafted amulet pendants were held up by a floating spell. After the arrangement was completed, Anduin immediately turned on the magic atmosphere light. Various colorful light balls were emitted from the mouths of creatures shaped like fire dragons, owls, griffins, etc. For a while, his booth seemed to be blowing soap bubbles, creating a very pleasing sight. On the other side, Anduin also turned on a magic phonograph in the style of a fire dragon, playing Celestina Warbeck's famous song, A Cauldron Full of Hot, Strong Love. This wizard singer also had some influence abroad. By playing her song, he could also do some publicity for her, helping her records sell better in the future. For a moment, Anduin's booth, with its excellent sound and light effects, immediately attracted the attention of all the wizards around him, including several booths next to him doing business. Even in the market square at the end of the street, many people noticed the scene in this street and turned into the alley one after another to visit. Goodness, little brother, what is this? What's that thing spitting light balls into the sky? It looks so beautiful, an older man in his 50s exclaimed, peering over at Anduin's booth with wide eyes. This is one of the magic lamps I sell. I call it the atmosphere lamp. It's used to enhance the ambience, especially during festivals. Many people buy one to decorate their homes, Anduin explained, glancing at the man who was selling ham, sausage, and bacon at the neighboring stall. The man chuckled. Is this an alchemy tool? Aren't the merchants from Egypt usually the ones setting up stalls with alchemy items? You don't look like an Arab. Anduin realized the man had mistaken him for an Egyptian alchemist. I'm not a local. I'm an English wizard, he clarified quickly. British? Is alchemy popular over there? I thought broomsticks were the only famous thing from Britain, the man said, scratching his head in confusion. But he soon dismissed the thought and eagerly asked, Little brother, I'm from Romania. Can you sell me 2 of these atmosphere lamps? They're great for attracting customers. Look, your booth is already crowded. Anduin was delighted. He hadn't expected his first customer to be another stall owner. His eyes lit up with an idea. Compared to tourists, these stall owners might have a more urgent need for atmosphere lamps, especially as it would be dark in a few hours, making the lamps even more effective. No problem, Anduin responded immediately. My atmosphere lamp usually costs 5 galleons, but if you agree to let me hang a silver flash company sign on the lamp and direct anyone who asks to my booth, I'll give you a 6% discount and sell it to you for 3 galleons. In reality, the original price of his atmosphere lamp in the UK was 3 galleons. His magic lamp business mainly profited from the energy storage components inside, similar to how light bulbs need replacing periodically. Every month, he earned over 10 galleons just by replacing components for people. End of this chapter. Chapter 431, The Helper. Since this is a foreign country, the products sold here are more expensive than those back home, and it's quite normal to see a premium. Anduin believed that the products sold at other stalls must be more expensive than domestic ones. As for the uncle who sold smoked meat products, after hearing Anduin's proposal, he understood what Anduin was thinking and immediately laughed. No problem. I don't see any reason to refuse, he said, handing over a smile to Lou Gallion. He then took 2 ambient lamps from Anduin, which looked like desk lamps, and turned them on in his store as a gimmick. This attracted many wizards to stop and take a look. Little brother, Your magic lamp works quite well. As a thank you, please try our Romanian specialty dragon meat sausage. If you're interested, I can also give you a discount, the uncle said, smiling as he handed over 2 lightly grilled sausages. The wizarding world is full of wonders, even dragon meat sausages. After taking a bite, Anduin tasted it curiously and found the flavor quite good. He then took a serious look at the uncle's booth and discovered that besides dragon meat sausage, he also sold dragon meat smoked meat, ream beef sausage, and other ingredients he had never seen before. Seeing this, Anduin couldn't help but swallow. His appetite clearly piqued. Then he rolled his eyes and suddenly had a good idea. "Uncle," Anduin called out to the man, continuing after getting a response. "Would you like to make a good deal with me?" "Business? Do you want to buy my goods?" The uncle's energy returned at the prospect. "Yes and no," Anduin laughed. "Would you like to help me sell ambient lamps to other stall owners? The price and conditions are the same as before. For every magic lamp you sell for me, I'll buy 1 galleon worth of meat products from you." Anduin actually wanted to eat, but didn't want to waste money, so he used the excuse of buying something to get the uncle to sell for him. After all, he was only one person, and the uncle had 3 people to look after the store, so it was better to send one person to help. "Is what you said true?" The middle-aged uncle confirmed with Anduin, and immediately agreed after getting a positive answer. He just had to run errands and could sell things with just word of mouth. It was a good deal, so he greeted another Romanian wizard beside him and then ran out with a few magic lamps in his arms. Soon, under the uncle's hard-working promotion, gorgeous balls of light rose above many stalls around, and this trend even spread to the market in the central square. Through the initial sound and light attraction, coupled with the promotion of other booths, Anduin's front door attracted many wizards asking for prices. After a while, he sold 8 magic lamps, 6 magic gramophones, and 3 magic accessories. Of course, there was no discount for ordinary customers. As the evening progressed and the sky gradually darkened, almost all the stalls in the square market were equipped with Anduin's ambient lights. After all, if others have something you don't, it naturally seems unreasonable. The stalls behind the magic lights could indeed attract the attention of others, and his booth became crowded with people, with an endless stream of wizards buying and asking about alchemy props. This scene was what May Wacy, Vanessa, Bianca, and others saw when they visited the night market. "Oh my God, what's going on with the Kara black market? Isn't this kind of magic lamp a specialty of Anduin's store? Why are they at almost every stall?" Vanessa exclaimed, holding a piece of scone and gnawing on it while sighing. "Didn't you see that the magic lamps on those booths are all hung with the signboard of Silver Flash Trading Company? It seems that this is some kind of marketing strategy," Bianca observed. Anduin's method had clearly made an impact. May Weiss chuckled as she observed the unique coat of arms hanging on the magic lamp. "It seems Anduin's products are quite popular here," she remarked. Bianca nodded, appreciating the semi-open-air night market. Anduin's magic lamps added a festive touch, with brilliant orbs of light floating above the square and side alleys, making the entire Karahay look more vibrant and lively than their own Christmas celebrations. However, when they reached Anduin's booth, they realized what true excitement was. 3 or 4 layers of people surrounded the stall, with wizards eager to visit, buy, or simply admire the items on display. Vanessa and May Weiss had to stand on tiptoe to catch a glimpse of Anduin, who was busily attending to customers. Noticing May Weiss and the others, Anduin immediately waved them over, as if relieved to see familiar faces. Despite not knowing what he wanted, the 2 women obediently squeezed through the crowd. "Vanessa, May Weiss, hurry up and help me. I'm almost overwhelmed," Anduin called out amidst the constant inquiries. "Ah?" Vanessa and May Weiss were taken aback. They had come to enjoy the night market, not to work as waiters. "There are too many customers," Anduin explained hurriedly. "I brought all the inventory from the store to save trouble, but it hasn't sold out yet. I can't handle it alone. Please help me. The prices are marked, and you know the effects of the products. If anyone asks, just explain them." He leaned closer and whispered, "I won't let you work for nothing. I'll pay you 10 galleons for the night." "Okay." Vanessa and May Weiss agreed in unison, enticed by the offer. They quickly began assisting customers, with Mayweiss showing a surprising familiarity with Anduin's business, suggesting she had helped before. With their assistance, Anduin finally felt a sense of relief. From the afternoon until now, a steady stream of people had been inquiring about his products. The previous publicity had worked wonders, drawing many wizards from other stalls to his booth after seeing the sign on the magic lamp. In just half a day, Anduin had sold nearly 100 magic lamps and gramophones, along with dozens of pendants. He had only sold one humanoid target, as he couldn't demonstrate it properly. Besides the wizard customers, Anduin also attracted several merchants from other countries, some running alchemy companies and others in different industries. They all had the same interest. They wanted to collaborate with Anduin. End of this chapter. Chapter 432, Surveillance. Seeing the popularity of Anduin's products, many companies approached him to become agents, offering quite favorable conditions. However, Anduin didn't give them an immediate answer. Instead, he took their contact information, planning to discuss further after conducting some investigations. With the help of his two assistants, Anduin finally had a chance to relax. He had been so busy with business that he hadn't even had time for dinner. Besides Anduin, the room was cluttered with alchemy props for replenishment and several boxes of sausages, bacon, and ham. At that moment, he received a signal from Hog. Upon receiving the message, Anduin discreetly took out a wireless earphone that resembled a large bean sprout and put it on. He then lightly tapped the monocle on his eye socket. Hog's cute puppy head appeared in his field of vision. From Anduin's perspective, Hog was in the corner of a building, using a tactical vest to hide his eyes and ears. The vest's camouflage function made it blend with his fur, so to others, he appeared as just a puppy with a dog leash around its neck. Soon, Hog's voice came through the earphone. "My lord, I followed that guy for a long time. After he went out at noon, he wandered around the market for a while and even visited your stall. Then he went into a cold drink shop and chatted with two wizards for a long time. Since they were discussing spells, I didn't contact you at that time." "Very good," Anduin said softly, putting his fist to his mouth. "Since you are contacting me now, does that mean there's something suspicious about that person?" "That's right," Hog nodded. "Just now, that man named Sebastian entered the building behind me and used the disillusionment spell before going in. The previously positioned Thunderbirds are in the same location. Shortly after he went in, Azalea also appeared. Although she used the disillusionment spell to become invisible, I could still recognize her with the echo glasses. Now the three of them are in this building, but I don't know the situation inside, so I didn't dare to enter rashly. What do you think we should do?" "Good job. It's right to be cautious," Anduin nodded slightly. "Turn out the monitoring spider. I want to know what's inside." "Yes." Hog shook his head cutely and then asked, "Sebastian is a researcher at the Alchemy Center. Will there be early warning alchemy equipment inside? You know Azalea is still in there. If she is found, will she be exposed? It's because she's inside that I need to know what's going on. I need to confirm if Azalea is truly loyal. Although using legilimency on her shows she hasn't lied to me, there are many technologies in the Silver Spear I don't understand. I'm afraid some spell might have been cast on her to bypass the lie detector. As for being discovered, with Thunderbird's anti-alchemy attitude and arrogance, there shouldn't be a problem. If they do notice, they won't immediately suspect Azalea. But if there's any trouble, remember to evacuate immediately." Anduin instructed Hog meticulously. This operation against the Thunderbird was crucial to his next series of plans, so he had to be extremely careful. Even Azalea, who had shown her loyalty, couldn't be fully trusted. "I understand," Hog nodded sharply. A small spider, not much bigger than a coin, crawled off Hog's back and swiftly entered the building. Soon, another image appeared in Anduin's field of vision, showing the view from the monitoring spider as it clung to the ground and moved quickly. The building resembled a Muggle inn, similar to a bed and breakfast, with many rooms inside. Fortunately, the spider's small size allowed it to navigate the building discreetly. The surveillance spiders, being very small, could easily slip through the cracks in the doors of the rooms. After searching several rooms, they finally found their target. In a rather large hotel suite, 3 individuals in black robes and faceless masks were seated on the sofa in the living room. "What happened a year ago?" Lee demanded as soon as the 3 of them met. "Why did you suddenly disappear from the world, and why did it take so long to contact me?" To avoid revealing any flaws, Azalea maintained her disguise as much as possible, imitating her demeanor and tone from when she had previously faced Thunderbird. Her voice carried a genuine tone of resentment. Before Anduin found her, she had no idea what was happening. "You were lurking in the Ministry of Magic, and you don't know anything about what happened at that time." Thunderbird's tone was still as arrogant as ever, even after a year. "You were of no help at all." "You have the nerve to say that," Azalea retorted. "It was all because of your unauthorized actions that night. I was completely unprepared and didn't even have time to pay attention to the situation in the ministry. When I was notified, I didn't even know who was at the scene. If you had informed me beforehand, I would have at least had a chance to warn you. And those aurors in the Ministry of Magic were like they were cursed, keeping silent about what happened that night. I didn't know you were there until I saw the fiery flames at the scene." Azalea's voice was full of resentment, and she didn't care that the other party was her superior. In the club, such situations were common. Everyone kept their distance, and there was no need for friendship. "Humph." Thunderbird, knowing he was at fault, still responded stiffly. "What use would it have been to notify you in advance? You're just a waste. Your position in the Ministry of Magic is merely decorative. At least some beautiful decorations can enter the rooms of those directors and hear some news." When Thunderbird mentioned the word beautiful, he emphasized his tone, clearly implying that he knew Azalea's true identity. He was warning her not to push too far, especially with other silver spears around. At this point, the Sphinx, who had been watching the exchange, intervened to smooth things over. "You two should calm down. After all, you are still members of the British branch, and we're all in this together. We need to work as a team." End of this chapter. Chapter 433. The Trap. After Thunderbird caused such a big disaster, is it even possible to establish a British branch? Now that the British Ministry of Magic has implemented nationwide portkey monitoring, I don't think Thunderbird can return to the UK, Azalea sighed helplessly. "That's why I came here this time. As long as I get rid of that troublesome Anduin and cut off the Ministry of Magic's equipment supply, the construction progress of the British branch can continue," Thunderbird said, thinking of the young wizard who had humiliated him. He couldn't help but snort coldly. "Is that the young man you mentioned to me before?" Sphinx interjected. "Since you returned to the headquarters, you've been reluctant to discuss what happened in the UK. Could he be the reason your operation failed? That's none of your business. I came to Egypt to handle personal matters. After today, don't come looking for me, and there's no need to contact me." Thunderbird's attitude towards Sphinx was dismissive, though not as harsh as it was towards Azalea. "But I need to know what happened. This is also the responsibility of the headquarters. Although the headquarters didn't pursue your failure, the loss of goods and partners was significant, costing us more time. My infiltration team is stuck in England. You have to tell me. That's 4 silver spears, enough to support 2 branches." Sphinx's tone was firm, despite his mild demeanor. "I don't know why your infiltration team disappeared. It might have something to do with Newt Scamander. As for the original actions..." Thunderbird was clearly unwilling to recount his embarrassing story. He then turned to Azalea. "Do you know how they found me? How could they locate the delivery site so accurately?" "I didn't know at the time, but afterward, Anduin sold a tactical map to the Ministry of Magic. It can show terrain and people over a very large area. I guess your exposure has something to do with that kind of prop," Azalea responded, following the script Anduin had arranged for her. "It's that Anduin again. If we don't get rid of this guy, there will be endless troubles." Thunderbird fumed, learning that the failure of the last operation might also be due to Anduin. "It seems the reason for your previous failure was all because of that young man," Sphinx speculated. "Lance had a high status in the club, and since he didn't want to talk about it, there was no way to force him." But Sphinx could still infer from Thunderbird's words. However, according to what you say, that Anduin is a genius in alchemy, I saw the list of recipients for this year's alchemy conference. He won the Gold Award for pioneering contribution, and his winning age is younger than Dumbledore's was back then. He is the youngest winner in history. Wouldn't it be a waste to get rid of such a talent directly? Is there no possibility of recruiting him? Sphinx muttered with some regret. Humph, he's not just an alchemy genius. Thunderbird snorted coldly, then said indignantly, You think I haven't tried to recruit him? That guy doesn't care about anything and doesn't take me seriously. He's a little bastard who likes to use unorthodox methods. Unorthodox methods? Sphinx thought to himself. With Thunderbird's temper, it would be a miracle if someone agreed to join him. He was surprised that the young man named Anduin had faced Thunderbird head-on and survived. This might prove that Anduin's strength was not to be underestimated. After pondering for a moment, Sphinx looked at Thunderbird again. So you came to Egypt this time to deal with Anduin, didn't you? Do you need my help, or do you not want me to join forces with you? Azalea asked, her tone laced with curiosity. Naturally, I have to handle my own affairs. Rely on your strength? Huh. Thunderbird scoffed mockingly. The British Ministry of Magic is very cautious about the inflow of people from abroad, but I have waited a long time for an opportunity to get Anduin to go abroad. As Thunderbird spoke, he glanced specifically at Sphinx. I need you to help me distract the people around him. It would be even better if you could delay the Egyptian Ministry of Magic for a while, giving me enough time to act. Turning to Azalea, Thunderbird's expression grew uncertain. I hope you can find a way to lure Anduin out. Although I'm not sure you have that ability, if you can't, I'll have to find an opportunity myself. You want me to create a chance for you to face him alone? Do you want a one-on-one duel with him? Azalea asked, genuinely puzzled by Thunderbird's intentions. I have a lot of scores to settle with him. Last time, he ambushed me with underhanded tactics. This time, I'll teach him what a real duel is, Thunderbird said, his eyes narrowing. Can you do it? Yes. After Anduin arrived in Egypt, he often asked if there was anyone selling rare local materials. I can tell him that I contacted a black market dealer for him and lure him out. I don't know much about the area, though. Is there a place here that's hidden enough? Azalea looked at the Sphinx beside her. The Abu Shawi mountain area on the outskirts of Cairo is very quiet at night. It used to be a black market trading place. I can also give you a real black market invitation letter, Sphinx said, pulling a letter from his pocket and handing it to Azalea. Then he turned to Thunderbird. The Acquired Alchemy Research Center will hold a dinner for wizards above the director level of the Ministry of Magic from various countries. Most of the Egyptian Ministry of Magic's armed forces will be deployed there, so no one will interfere with you. Are you sure you won't invite Anduin to that dinner party? He's going to a dinner party tomorrow, Azalea asked, puzzled. No, Sphinx shook his head resolutely. Tomorrow's dinner is a formal banquet. In addition to the directors, there will be alchemy masters from all over the world. The banquet the day after tomorrow is specifically for high-level officials of the Ministry of Magic to discuss international wizard trade agreements. That's good, Thunderbird said with a cold grin. He then looked at Azalea. If you can really help this time, maybe I'll see you in a new light. Remember, the day after tomorrow at 10 p.m., I want to see that brat there. No problem. With this invitation as bait, I'm sure I can get him out, Azalea replied confidently. End of this chapter. Chapter 434, Trade Deficit. Anduin had been keeping a close eye on the conspiracy involving the silver spear guns through his monitoring spider. When he learned that the Thunderbird had come to Egypt specifically to deal with him, he couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. This guy was quite vengeful, but upon reflection, Anduin realized he was no different. Now that he knew the opponent's plan in advance, there was no need for Hogg to keep an eye on it any longer. He immediately ordered Hogg to retrieve the monitoring spider and return to his residence early. At the market, with the assistance of 2 female aurors, the sales of his alchemy products went smoothly. The wizards attending the conference were all influential figures in their respective countries, so they were enthusiastic shoppers. When they brought these products back home, it would effectively serve as excellent publicity for Silver Flash Trading Co. Limited among international wizards. After working until very late, the crowd at the Karahay Bazaar gradually thinned out, and Anduin's goods were sold out in just one day. High-quality and affordable items like magic lamps and magic phonographs were particularly popular. Many talisman accessories were also sold, and even several human-shaped targets found buyers. However, selling out quickly had its downsides. Anduin had reserved a booth for 2 days, but now he had no more magic lamps or phonographs to sell the next day. As a result, he had to cut his sales trip short. After returning to his room, Azalea came to report on her meeting with the 2 silver spears. She was very thorough, detailing the entire process, location, and content of the meeting. Although Anduin already knew the details, he patiently listened to her recount everything. This is the black market invitation. According to Sphinx, this black market is run by his collaborator in Cairo, but it's no longer in Abu Shawi. Thunderbird wants me to bring you there around 10 o'clock in the evening the day after tomorrow, Azalea explained honestly. Good job. I know about this matter. You can reply to him tomorrow and say that I agree, Anduin nodded after listening to Azalea's story patiently. Then what should I do? Will I really take you there? Azalea asked innocently. Are you stupid? Hog, who was playing with a furball toy nearby, snapped. Of course, I will be there to ambush him in advance. Who actually plays by the rules in a duel like that idiot? That's right. You don't have to do anything the day after tomorrow. Just keep an eye on the movements of the Egyptian Ministry of Magic and the Sphinx for me, Anduin instructed. Sphinx? I don't know who he is. How can I pay attention to him? Azalea frowned, looking puzzled. His name is Sebastian. He is the honorary chairman of the Alchemy Research Center and a senior researcher. He should also attend the banquet hosted by the Ministry of Magic of various countries the day after tomorrow. Just keep an eye on the research center, Anduin explained. In truth, he was just giving Azalea something to do. Hog would continue to monitor the Sphinx for him when the time came. You already know the other party's identity? Azalea was taken aback. She still didn't know about Anduin's ability to use the mask to track people. She only felt that the young man in front of her was becoming more and more formidable. Heh! Anduin chuckled lightly at Azalea's surprised expression and then sent her away. When only Anduin and Hog were left in the room, he didn't rest immediately. Instead, he apparated to the outside of the tavern, donned his flying cloak, cast a disillusionment charm on himself, and sped towards Abu Shawi. He wanted to scout the location in advance. In the evening, Bianca knocked on Anduin's door, dressed in a standard banquet gown. Anduin appeared before her, impeccably dressed and exuding elegance. Merlin's beard, if tonight's dinner were a social dance, wouldn't you still captivate all the young witches? Bianca teased, laughing at the sight of the well-dressed Anduin. Don't make fun of me. I'm trying to keep a low profile. I don't want those master alchemists to think I'm frivolous, Anduin replied modestly. Low profile, you say? Bianca remarked, noticing the magical fluctuations emanating from Anduin's clothes and accessories. To the untrained eye, he might appear as a young man in a dark suit, but to the keen old wizards, Anduin was like a human-shaped light bulb. Let's not dwell on that, Bianca said, shaking her head in exasperation. Did you set up a stall in Karahai again today? I think your business will soon expand abroad. Unfortunately, my inventory was depleted yesterday, so I mostly stayed in my room today, Anduin explained, though he silently added that he had returned at noon. You should have told me earlier. I could have taken you to meet some local Ministry of Magic officials during the day, Bianca said regretfully. She then leaned in close to Anduin's ear and whispered, The alchemy products you sold last night have attracted the attention of many local alchemists, including some directors from the Ministry of Magic. They've taken an interest in your business. During my conversations with them, many wizards expressed their admiration for your alchemy products and showed interest in collaborating with you. The British Department of International Magic Cooperation might become quite busy because of you, Bianca added. Anduin nodded thoughtfully. He had noticed several wizards with special identities the previous day, all exuding an air of authority or scholarly wisdom. Isn't the British Ministry of Magic very strict on international trade? Won't trading with other countries be troublesome? he asked. It used to be very strict, but that was to protect the local economy, Bianca explained, shaking her head helplessly. You might not be aware of the full story. In recent decades, the UK hasn't achieved the desired output. Aside from raw materials like local magical animals and herbs, there are only a few broomstick manufacturing companies producing goods. But not every country is as fond of broomsticks, she continued. In the past, to support the broomstick industry, we even put a lot of effort into promoting the sport of Quidditch. The Ministry of Magic spent considerable effort to get the Quidditch World Cup recognized by the Wizarding International. Really? Anduin raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had assumed Quidditch's popularity was solely due to its inherent excitement. Indeed, Bianca sighed. Look at any country with more than a dozen Quidditch club teams. Many wizarding regions have their own unique and interesting sports, but they didn't become popular because they didn't involve any significant interests or weren't valued by the local Ministry of Magic. So, the UK was cautious about allowing alchemy products from other countries to prevent trade deficits and the outflow of domestic wealth, Anduin surmised. He realized that if international trade were completely liberalized, the excellent alchemy tools he had seen in the Kara black market would soon flood the UK, overwhelming the local alchemy industry and capturing most of the market, causing local wizards' galleons to flow abroad. Trade deficit? That's a fitting term. Yes, it was a trade deficit, Bianca agreed. But it wasn't about completely preventing the inflow of foreign products. After all, we needed to sell our broomsticks. The trade volume was relatively small, mostly involving raw material transactions. Bianca nodded in satisfaction, seeing that Anduin quickly grasped the concept. So, my alchemy company is beneficial to our Ministry of Magic's international trade? Anduin asked tentatively. It's more than just beneficial, Bianca replied, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. She leaned closer and asked, Let me ask you first, is the production efficiency of Silver Flash Trading Company's alchemy products guaranteed? Is she doubting my production capacity? Anduin thought, amused. The size of his factory could be doubled, even tripled, at any tai. If the raw materials are sufficient, I only need 3 days to produce the quantity sold last night. If I invest more, the speed can be even faster, Anduin said with a laugh. Are you sure? Bianca recalled what she had seen and heard the previous night, secretly surprised. Anduin had sold a significant amount yesterday. Due to the alchemy conference, the traffic in Karahai had increased several times. Usually, those alchemy props could be sold over a week, and after the initial excitement, they could even sell for a month. I promise. Anduin's confident expression reassured Bianca that he wasn't exaggerating. Okay, if that's the case, the UK's international trade treaty is likely to be amended this year. We also want to trade with wizards from other countries, and there is a demand for foreign products in our country, Bianca explained, her voice tinged with excitement. Previously, due to the trade deficit, we had to be conservative. Now, with your Silver Flash Company, we have the confidence to compete. However, we will proceed cautiously in the first year. Depending on the trade situation, we may gradually increase our efforts. Will the ministries of magic in other countries agree? And what do I need to do? Anduin asked. Trade is mutual. When we sell more, we will naturally bring in more products. As for the attitude of other countries' ministries of magic, you don't need to worry. They have long coveted the British market, Bianca said, pouting and sneering. From today, I will change it to 3,000 words per chapter, with a minimum of 2 chapters per day, and sometimes 3 chapters. End of this chapter. Chapter 435, Confronting the Sphinx. And there are naturally many benefits for your Silver Flash Trading Company. What you need to do is to ensure production, including both quality and quantity, Bianca said seriously. For these international trade products, the Ministry of Magic will provide the raw materials. Of course, we hope you can lower the price, as we have to add tariffs. Secondly, your product must pass the quality inspection of the British Ministry of Magic and be signed off by the ministry before it can be sold. Additionally, the dealer you choose must be legal. We have to supervise this. Upon hearing the word tariff, Anduin nodded knowingly. It turns out that you are working so hard to promote international trade in order to get a share of it, It really is not profitable. However, it would be great if he could provide raw materials. The bulk of the cost of his alchemy products is actually raw materials and electricity, but the electricity can be settled with Muggle money. If he doesn't even have to pay for the raw materials, the cost can be said to be negligible. Thinking of this, Anduin felt that even if the price was reduced, he would still make money. Okay, I have no problem here. If the Ministry of Magic can provide the raw materials, I can sell them at a 30% discount from the original price. Of course, the so-called original price is the one negotiated with the Ministry of Magic on the spot. Bianca raised an eyebrow. What he meant was to give 30% of the benefits to the British Ministry of Magic. If the discount given to the Ministry of Magic was included, the benefits would be even more. Of course, Anduin knew after his own calculation that even if he gave up so much, his profit would still increase. However, Bianca's expression was quite exciting when she heard Anduin's words. A 30% price reduction means that the 30% will become a tariff. Bianca originally imagined that it would be good if Anduin could reduce the price by 10% to 15%. They would add a little more to the actual price of the others. Galleons, then the Ministry of Magic can have a benefit of 10 galleons. Although there are hidden dangers in this way, for example, sales will decrease. For example, it will breed smugglers or delivery parties, etc. But now, even if a 10-galleon amulet is sold to a foreign dealer, even if it still sells for 10 galleons, the Ministry of Magic can still get a benefit of 3 galleons. Are you serious? Will this affect your profit? Bianca looked at Anduin very seriously. The International Trade Agreement every 3 years is actually the real theme of the Alchemy Conference. Anduin's decision will affect the decision-making of the British Ministry of Magic in this trade agreement. Of course I'm serious. As long as I can open up the international market, no matter how small my profit is, at least there will be some. The Ministry of Magic and Minister Budnor have given me so much help, and appropriate feedback should be given. Anduin spoke with conviction, making him look like a conscientious businessman willing to take risks. Good boy, starting tomorrow night, we will redraft the international trade meeting with the Ministry of Magic of various countries. At that time, the directors of the International Magical Cooperation Department and the Magical Transportation Department will make a special trip to attend the meeting. I will convey your sincerity to them. After Bianca finished speaking, she patted Anduin's shoulder appreciatively again. If all goes well, Anduin and Silver Flash Trading Company will be considered the favored partners of the British Ministry of Magic in the future. No, it is not too much to say that he is a real father. Bianca became extremely excited after communicating with Anduin and brought him to the banquet hall of the headquarters of the Egyptian Alchemy Research Center with a look of joy. The decoration in the banquet hall was more gorgeous than the hall downstairs. There were golden decorations. The banquet hall was illuminated with strong magical fluctuation, and numerous magical atmosphere lights had been added. It was evident that the research center had purchased these from Anduin's Silver Flash Trading Company just yesterday, and they were already in use. This served as another advertisement for Anduin's business. A large number of wizards had already gathered in the hall, and whispers filled the air as Bianca and Anduin entered. Phrases like, "That young man is," "Silver Flash Firm," "Magic Lamp," and "Gold Award for Pioneering Contribution" could be heard. "Bianca, Anduin, you arrived quite late," Burns remarked as he approached them, accompanied by several older wizards. "Mr. Burns," Anduin and Bianca greeted him in unison. "Come, Anduin, let me introduce you to some local alchemy masters," Burns said with a smile, stepping aside to make introductions. "This is Mr. Issa, a master alchemist, senior researcher, and honorary chairman of the research center. He is a leading figure in alchemy materials science and owns the largest weather blanket manufacturing company in Cairo," Burns said, pointing to an elderly man in his 60s. "And this is Miss Abdu, also a master of alchemy and a professional scholar in rune inscription. You may remember her from your previous communications. She owns the largest magic camera company in Cairo," Burns continued, indicating a middle-aged lady. Anduin greeted the two masters respectfully, and both Isa and Abdu nodded kindly in return. Lastly, this is my colleague in spell science, Mr. Sebastian. His expertise in spell science surpasses even mine. He is a senior researcher and honorary chairman of the research center, Burns said, patting Anduin on the shoulder. Anduin couldn't help but think to himself, oh, what's going on here? It seems this Sphinx is quite familiar with Professor Burns. Hello, Mr. Sebastian, Anduin said, maintaining his composure. Hello, Mr. Wilson. You are indeed young and promising. Sebastian replied politely, scrutinizing Anduin and nodding to himself. He noted the numerous magical props on Anduin's person, thinking, this young man's alchemy skills are impressive. I wonder if he can face a Thunderbird without relying on equipment. It must be the equipment. Thunderbird's frustration suggests he was bested by alchemy props. Both men were aware of the other's act, adding a layer of mutual understanding to their interaction. Anduin, I hope you don't mind if I call you that. After all our communications, it's a pleasure to finally meet you, Ms. Abdu said warmly. You caused quite a stir at the Cara Black collection yesterday. Many people are curious about the boy selling the lamp. Indeed, Mr. Isa added with a smile. The magic lamp and the gramophone are already in use here at the banquet hall, but what impressed me most was the humanoid target you sold. I had my assistant purchase one, and its functionality is fascinating. It has rekindled my joy in spellcasting, something I haven't felt in a long time. Really? It seems I missed out, Miss Abdu said with a hint of regret. I only bought a few pairs of magic pendants, but their craftsmanship is remarkable. The runes are almost identical, making me think they were conjured with the duplication charm. And at 12 galleons, they are quite a bargain for their quality. Both of you are too kind. Miss Abdu, if you need it, I can gift you a humanoid target. After all, I've learned a lot about rune inscriptions from you over the years, Anduin said modestly, responding to the praise from the two master alchemists. His words were sincere. His rapid improvement in alchemy was not only due to the materials he obtained from the Travers family, but also the guidance from master alchemists like Burns, who generously shared their expertise. There is no teacher who doesn't appreciate a smart and hardworking student, Ms. Abdu replied with a smile. She had also gained inspiration from Anduin's invention of the echo charm, which led her to develop 2 new models of magic cameras that became very popular. Thus, she held Anduin in high regard. Meanwhile, Sphinx observed Anduin's interaction with the two masters and mused silently. Is this kid really that popular? Judging by Abdu's reaction, his alchemy skills are higher than I expected. It's a pity Thunderbird didn't clean it up. If only I had been the one to set up a branch in England, I might have been able to win over this young man due to our similar interests. This Anduin is almost catching up with Dumbledore back then. Sebastian. Abdu's voice broke through Sebastian's thoughts, bringing him back to the present. What's the matter with you? Why are you suddenly in a daze? Abdu asked, puzzled. I just remembered some academic questions and got a bit lost in thought, Sebastian replied with an embarrassed smile. Haha, this guy is usually a nerd and a workaholic. He probably can't think of anything else except spells, Mr. Isa teased. Anduin, observing Sebastian's awkward smile, thought to himself, that's not necessarily true. He might be thinking about how to get rid of me. By the way, what were you talking about just now? Sebastian asked, trying to ease the embarrassment. End of this chapter. Chapter 436, Bidding. We are discussing this trade agreement. The British Ministry of Magic will undoubtedly expand its trade share due to Anduin's Silver Flash Trading Company. If we can secure a distribution contract with Anduin's Silver Flash Alchemy Company, it means obtaining the exclusive right to sell their products in Egypt and potentially in the UK as well, Mrs. Abdu briefly explained to Sebastian. Exactly. What do you think of Anduin's Silver Flash Alchemy Company? Are you interested in investing? Our idea is for several trading houses to join forces, each distributing 1 or 2 products from Anduin's portfolio, Mr. Isa added, smiling at Anduin. After hearing the details of the products you introduced, I can't help but want to buy from Silver Flash as soon as possible. You are too kind, Mr. Isa. I just took advantage of my youth to explore more ideas. In terms of technical depth, I really can't compare with the masters here, Anduin replied modestly. In previous discussions, the topic of distribution had already come up. The two master alchemists, along with other masters and senior researchers who joined the conversation later, were all very interested in Anduin's products. Their interest grew even more after Anduin introduced his complete product catalog. Several masters even made offers on the spot, promising various conditions. The enthusiasm was palpable. Eventually, Mr. Issa proposed a solution. Given Anduin's extensive product range, it would be impractical for one entity to handle everything. He suggested categorizing the products and then holding a fair competition for each series. This proposal was immediately accepted by most alchemists, including Anduin. Some wizards were even eager to conduct an on-site bidding, clearly aware of the strength of Anduin's Silver Flash Trading Company. This was essentially an insider transaction. Anduin had no objections. The people gathered were some of the most renowned and powerful wizards in the area. It was an opportunity he couldn't afford to miss. "Mr. Sebastian, do you intend to cooperate with me?" Anduin asked the Sphinx with a smile. "Oh no," Sebastian replied apologetically. "I'm not very interested in doing business, so let's leave it at that." He secretly thought to himself that this kid might not even be alive after tomorrow. Sebastian smiled inwardly, relieved that he didn't have to get involved. He had other plans, including dealing with Thunderbird and eventually eliminating the Sphinx. "In that case, let's go inside and talk," Mr. Issa suggested, pleased that Sebastian wasn't interested. This meant one less competitor. He quickly organized everyone to find a private place to discuss the details. There were about 8 or 9 people present. Mr. Issa led them to a luxuriously decorated reception room to finalize the distribution contract. Since Sebastian wasn't participating, he wasn't included. Bianca, on the other hand, wanted to understand the local wizards' attitudes towards Anduin's products, as it would directly impact the subsequent trade agreement. Burns had already been appointed as Anduin's general agent in Egypt in previous discussions. The remaining 6 people were all powerful local alchemy masters, each with their own alchemy industry. Some even held monopolies on certain alchemy products. For instance, Miss Abdu was responsible for manufacturing all the magic cameras in the wizarding world. "All right, now that we have some privacy," Mr. Issa said, inviting everyone to sit in the living room. With a smile, he continued, "We're all familiar with each other, so let's get straight to business. I'll start." Mr. Issa turned to Anduin. "After experiencing the products firsthand, I've found that my favorite is the humanoid target. I hope to secure the rights to sell these targets in Egypt. I'm willing to place an initial order of 5,000 galleons and can pay a 20% deposit once the trade agreement is finalized." Mr. Issa's efficiency was impressive, and he made his proposal clear and direct. The humanoid target, being one of the most technically advanced products Anduin offered, was a significant choice. The other alchemists in the room fell silent, unwilling to compete for this high-value item. After all, the cheapest humanoid target cost over 100 galleons, and 5,000 galleons could buy dozens of them. Moreover, Issa's order was substantial. "Since no one else is interested in competing, Mr. Issa, the humanoid target business in Egypt is yours," Anduin declared, sealing the deal. He was genuinely impressed by Mr. Issa's sincerity. Everyone was aware that future tariffs could significantly increase the price of these products, yet Issa didn't hesitate to place a large order. Bianca, sitting next to Anduin, was even more excited. He quickly calculated the potential revenue. If the tariff was 30% on 5,000 galleons, the Ministry of Magic could earn over 1,000 galleons from just one product. However, Bianca's excitement was short-lived as another voice interrupted. "I want to represent the sales of magic lamps, including household and decorative lamps. I'm willing to place an order of 6,000 galleons with a 20% deposit. Additionally, I grant Silver Flash Trading Company the exclusive agency for magic cameras in the UK, provided the supply is completed within a month," Miss Abdu announced, showcasing her wealth and determination. Before Bianca could process Ms. Abdu's offer, another alchemist raised the stakes. "I can place an order of 8,000 galleons. While I don't have exclusive agency rights, I can offer 1,000 galleons to purchase them." The competition intensified. Anduin's magic lamps had been a hit at Karahai, making them one of his most commercially valuable products. Naturally, several alchemists were eager to secure the rights. An order of 10,000 galleons, plus an agency fee of 1,000 galleons, Mr. Isa interjected, unwilling to settle for just the humanoid target business. Mr. Isa, your appetite is too big, Ms. Abdu retorted, giving him a sharp look. Despite their familiarity, she wasn't about to back down. 12,000 galleon order, 2,000 galleons for agency rights, with other conditions unchanged. An order of 13,000 galleons, 2,000 galleons. 13,500 galleon order. The bidding war escalated quickly, with more alchemists joining in and raising the stakes. Ms. Abdu was taken aback by the fierce competition. She knew that the real profit from products like the magic lamp and magic gramophone came not from the items themselves, but from their additional components, such as energy storage components and records. The magic camera she bought relies on magical film and photo-developing tools to generate revenue. An order of 20,000 galleons with an agency fee of 4,000 galleons, and I'm willing to pay a 30% deposit up front. All other conditions remain unchanged. Miss Abdu immediately proposed an extremely exaggerated price after seeing the bids continuously rise. Her offer stunned everyone around her. They weren't surprised by the high order of 20,000 galleons, as the bidding had already reached 18,000 galleons. What caught their attention was the agency fee of 4,000 galleons and the 30% deposit. Considering these amounts, it totaled 10,000 galleons. Wasn't she afraid that Anduin might take the money and disappear? Moreover, doing business in the Wizarding Society is very cash flow oriented. Debt issues, such as delayed payments, are quite common. Typically, the final payment isn't made until the product is delivered, and even installment payments can be negotiated. The thought of suddenly taking out so much cash made the other alchemists present feel uneasy. They silently acknowledged that Mrs. Abdu was not someone to be trifled with. As a result, this particular business deal was naturally won by the wealthy Miss Abdu. Bianca, standing next to her, was even more astounded. He could no longer look at the alchemists in front of him the same way. Did learning alchemy really make this much money? If he had known, he would have studied the protection of magical animals back then. His monthly salary was 200 galleons, which amounted to 2,400 leons a year. Abdu's bill was worth 10 years of his expenses. Bianca complained and calculated frantically in his mind. Although Anduin was also surprised, he didn't show it. He continued to preside over the bidding with a composed and calm demeanor. While the agency rights for the magic lamp were gone, other products remained popular, especially the magic pendant and magic phonograph. Additionally, other items such as tracking glasses, protective gloves, medical examination equipment, and magic music boxes were also highly sought after. However, equipment like jammers, tactical maps, tactical leather boots, and tactical vests could only be supplied directly to the Ministry of Magic of other countries by the British Ministry of Magic due to their potential dangers. These items were not suitable for civilian wizards at present. End of this chapter. Chapter 437, Divine Front Shadowless Sword Chi. The competition for the internal proxy auction was intense but efficiently conducted, with all decisions finalized by the end of that evening's dinner. Anduin secured a production order for alchemy props, earning a staggering 73,000 galleons. Even with a 20% deposit, his immediate cash income was close to 15,000 galleons. Although the agency fee wasn't substantial, it still amounted to 8,000 galleons, which was essentially free money. Additionally, Anduin obtained the UK agency rights for various props, including magic cameras, weather blankets, and magic tents. The only exception was the flying carpet, which the Ministry of Magic restricted to protect the broom industry in the UK. Essentially, Anduin had become the British agent for mainstream alchemy products in the international wizarding world. Director Bianca, who had been observing the proceedings, was utterly stunned. The alchemists discussed money in tens of thousands, leaving him momentarily unable to process the figures. Bianca also realized that Anduin and his Silver Flash Trading Company would become invaluable allies to the British Ministry of Magic. This trade agreement could be signed with even greater confidence. After concluding the bidding for the agency contract, the alchemists signed a tentative agreement with Anduin. Once the Ministry of Magic's trade agreement was finalized in the coming days, they could sign a formal contract and pay the final amount. Anduin, thrilled by the influx of orders, returned to his room after dinner and immediately wrote to Kiki at home, instructing her to activate all the lathes in the magic workshop in the basement. His underground factory was soon operating at full capacity. The next day marked the official start of the International Alchemy Conference, which would last for 3 days. The conference aimed to award outstanding alchemists from the past 3 years and discuss the latest spells, runes, and materials. Essentially, it was a high-end academic exchange conference. On the first day, Anduin was awarded the gold medal for pioneering contributions of the International Alchemy Conference. Although the process seemed mundane to Anduin, merely receiving a trophy and giving an acceptance speech, it was a moment of immense pride for the audience. The alchemists and wizards from around the world admired this young, handsome wizard who had achieved such an honor at his age. The last person to do so was Dumbledore, another British wizard. For many attendees and reporters, Anduin's award was the highlight of the conference. The subsequent academic speeches were often too complex for the general audience and reporters, who would likely summarize them in a single sentence in their articles. In contrast, Anduin's achievements and persona were more captivating and easier to write about. As a result, Anduin's name quickly spread to various countries, thanks to the international reporters. However, Anduin, still attending the conference, paid little attention to the media. He was engrossed in the speeches of master alchemists, finding immense value in what others might consider incomprehensible. Meanwhile, it was challenging for the 3 witches, including May, to keep up with the dense academic content. Weissy had come to accompany them. They couldn't understand anything, but they had to stay at the scene. After all, their duty was to protect the alchemists in the country. Director Bianca quietly slipped away after the award ceremony, claiming he was going to pick up 2 directors who had come to sign a trade agreement. No one knew if he was telling the truth, but they didn't dare to question him because of his official status. As evening approached, the ladies finally concluded their academically taxing study session and began discussing where to go for fun. When they wanted to invite Anduin to dinner, they found that the young man had long since disappeared. Only Mavis and Vanessa, who were bored, and Azalea, who was deep in thought, remained. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, the Thunderbird, full of malevolent intent, appeared in the Ebushawi mountain area. It surveyed the surroundings and quickly locked onto an open space with a wide view. Thunderbird had already made up his mind to surprise Anduin, who had dared to offend him. The last time, Anduin had used despicable means to hurt him, which was a disgrace. This time, Thunderbird decided not to give Anduin any chance, intending to use all his strength to instantly disarm him. Thunderbird never thought he had underestimated Anduin. He admitted that the young man had the ability to challenge him, but that was all. As long as Thunderbird used his true strength, Anduin would have no chance. The only thing Thunderbird needed to be cautious of was Anduin's potential escape. However, he had just acquired a high-quality flying carpet from Sphinx, which was extremely fast, ensuring that Anduin wouldn't get away. Arrogant Anduin, this time I will make you experience true despair, Thunderbird muttered, full of resentment, as he slowly approached the open space. But soon, his expression darkened. He felt an unpleasant sensation under his feet, something familiar yet strange. Boom! A monstrous explosion erupted in the open space, accompanied by a terrifying vibration from beneath Thunderbird's feet. A painful memory he didn't want to recall flashed in his mind just before he was engulfed by the violent explosion. The ground within a 10-meter radius exploded instantly, and the blast lasted for several seconds. Dust and debris were thrown more than 10 meters into the air, and the ground within a few kilometers felt the violent tremor. This explosion was much more intense than the previous one in Ireland, but Thunderbird was not someone who could be easily dealt with. When the smoke and dust cleared, Thunderbird's ferocious face emerged in the open space. He was wrapped in a scarlet protective shield, similar to last time, but this one felt strange and powerful. The magic light on the shield was extremely dim, and the color distribution was uneven, indicating that it couldn't completely withstand the explosion's intensity. Thunderbird didn't look as disheveled as he had when he was blown to pieces last time. It seemed that his reaction had been much quicker this time. However, despite the lack of visible trauma, his terrifying face, bleeding from 7 orifices, showed that he had suffered serious internal injuries. "Anduin!" Thunderbird shouted frantically, blood dripping from his eyes, his red pupils wide open. He couldn't accept what had just happened. Being caught in the same trap twice was infuriating. Now that this had happened, it was clear Anduin had prepared in advance. This meant someone had leaked information about the operation. Was it a unicorn or a sphinx? Thunderbird frantically searched for Anduin's figure while quickly analyzing the situation. He was arrogant, but not because he lacked intelligence. Soon, he identified a suspect in his mind. It was probably Asai Leah. Before he could finish his thoughts, a crescent-shaped sword aura shot out from behind him. The sword aura was faintly visible in the air, resembling the shadowless curse that Anduin had used before. However, this sword aura was longer and had faint blue and silver arcs flashing on the half-moon-shaped blade, indicating it was more powerful than the ordinary shadowless curse. "You finally showed up, you coward! Roar!" Thunderbird bellowed in rage. Being ambushed had made him extremely angry, even more so than the last time he was stalked. His emotions were already unstable, and with a loud roar, he summoned a fierce blue flame, transforming it into a ferocious tiger in the air. The tiger bit into the menacing sword energy and, with turbulent power, charged towards Anduin. Anduin faced the furious Thunderbird directly, his expression calm and unflinching. He slowly walked towards the fiery tiger, holding his sword, on me, in his arms. His pace quickened from a walk to a trot and then to a full sprint. In just over a second, Anduin's speed had reached its peak. A year ago, he might have turned and fled from the terrifying blue fiendfire, but now... Anduin gripped the sword with both hands, and dazzling blue and silver lightning flashed from the blade. He slashed downwards with great force, and a beam of lightning several meters long appeared, transforming into a huge blade that cleaved the giant blue flame tiger in two. After splitting the tiger, Anduin immediately twirled his sword and swung it repeatedly, forming several sword auras that shone with silver light, all aimed directly at Thunderbird. Each of these sword auras was an enhanced version of the shadowless curse. Thunderbird was both furious and shocked. How had Anduin managed to cut through his blue fiendfire so effortlessly? A year ago, Anduin had been powerless against it. Now, he could confront it head-on. And what was that sword he held? The magical fluctuations from it were astonishing, and the intensity of Anduin's magic was far greater than it had been last year. What had happened? Had this kid taken some kind of potion? End of this chapter. Chapter 438, Shoulder Cannon. At this moment, Thunderbird didn't have time to think. The sword lights in front of his eyes came swiftly, reaching him in the blink of an eye. Despite his panic and the pain from the explosion's aftermath, his years of fighting instincts kicked in. Thunderbird swung his wand violently, and his snow-white aspen wand seemed to conjure a hell blade made of blue fiendfire from thin air. He slashed at the incoming sword energies with this fiery blade. However, contrary to his expectations, the blue fiendfire did not destroy the sword auras. The half-moon-shaped sword chi maintained their force, clashing with Thunderbird's blade and producing bursts of sparks. The sword energies resisted the slashing fire knife. What kind of spell is this, so powerful? Thunderbird thought, parrying the sword chi with his yan blade. He felt a sharp pain in his hand and was shocked. His original plan was to counterattack Anduin after destroying the sword energies, but now he was struggling just to resist them. By this time, Anduin had closed the distance. When he was only a few meters away, Thunderbird finally managed to block or deflect the sword chi. Anduin didn't give him any time to react and immediately launched a continuous attack with Destroyer. The long sword pierced through the air with a sound like crackling electricity, aiming straight at Thunderbird's weak points. Destroyer seemed to transform, with sticky plasma bubbling all over its body, turning into a magic sword several meters long. Facing Anduin's relentless assault, Thunderbird could only set up Yan Ren to defend himself, barely parrying the thunder sword. But due to the explosion's aftermath, his body was not in peak condition, and his melee skills were inferior to Anduin's. After only 10 seconds, he began to miss moves frequently and was hit several times by Anduin's slashes and thrusts. The scarlet magic shield protecting him was also taking a beating from the dense plasma-like wild thunder. It seemed it wouldn't hold up after a few more attacks. No, this kid's magic power has increased significantly. He can now fight Lanliho head-on, and there's something off about his sword. Every attack extracts magic power from fierce flame. This little bastard is as skilled as professional swordsmen. I must keep my distance, or the consequences will be disastrous. Thunderbird thought, feeling the increasing pain in his jaw and wrist. He decided he couldn't continue the stalemate any longer. On the other side, Anduin's offensive showed no signs of slowing. After deflecting Thunderbird's Yan blade to the right with a powerful sword move, he immediately switched Destroyer to his left hand. Spinning his body, he gathered power and thrust forward, executing a move called Fairy Guide. Thunderbird didn't have time to retrieve Yan Ren, which had been pushed away. He could only watch helplessly as the Thunder Sword, shining with dazzling silver light, struck his protective shield. The impact sent ripples through the scarlet magic shield, and it seemed on the verge of shattering. Thunderbird, who was Destroyer stabbed straight in the middle. Anduin gritted his teeth fiercely, but didn't let it deter him. He straightened up and slammed his Thunder Sword against the magic shield. The shield was already in a precarious state, and now, under the pressure from Anduin's Thunder Sword, it was like a balloon being pierced by a toothpick. A section of the shield bulged inward and then broke with a pop. However, the quality of the scarlet magic shield that Thunderbird used to save his life was impressive. Instead of shattering like an ordinary iron armor curse, it cracked like glass, leaving only a hole while the rest remained intact. Seeing this, Anduin didn't know what Thunderbird was planning, but he knew he couldn't miss this opportunity. He immediately activated the wild thunder on his body, directing it at Thunderbird. After the shield was broken, Thunderbird finally withdrew the Yan blade in his hand and tightly gripped the long sword of Annihilation. He managed to halt the spread of the wild thunder towards him. Thunderbird then gathered his magic power on the shield, quickly closing the gap pierced by the long sword. Within a few blinks, the shield clamped tightly around the sword. "Drink!" Thunderbird shouted loudly. Suddenly, a row of fierce blue fiendfire ignited around him and pressed towards Anduin, reminiscent of the attack when he had previously chased Anduin. Oh, is he trying to force me back and disarm me? Anduin could feel the force of the magic shield clamping on Destroyer, making it impossible to pull it out for the moment. But this method is a bit whimsical, Anduin thought coldly. He had made thorough preparations and tactical rehearsals for today's battle, unlike the sudden encounter a year ago. So in the face of Thunderbird's sudden attack, Anduin responded calmly. Abandoning the sword and retreating was not an option. Getting close to the front was hard-earned, and giving up the current advantage would only turn the battle into a pure contest of mana. Although his magic strength had improved significantly after being tempered by desolation, he still couldn't match Thunderbird in terms of magic power reserves. Therefore, he quickly devised a countermeasure. Anduin opened a pocket on the front of his tactical vest, revealing a travel water bottle inside. Soon, a large mass of magical water spewed out from the kettle, flowing against his body and forming a layer of water armor around him. The blue fiendfire, which was like a stormy sea, was completely separated by the water armor. Despite Thunderbird's control, the flames couldn't penetrate the water. This magical water acted as a nemesis to the fiendfire, constantly extinguishing the flames. However, the effectiveness of this magical water was due to its saturation with fiendfire anti-curse magic power. Once the magic power was consumed, the effect would diminish. But Anduin had already planned for this. He intended to take Thunderbird down during this period. As soon as he blocked the fiendfire, he moved forward, continuously exerting force to stab the long sword deeper. Simultaneously, his tactical vest lit up with an aura. Two rectangular metal box-like devices moved up from the back of his vest, positioning themselves directly on Anduin's shoulders along two tracks. Then, a A small opening suddenly appeared in front of the two metal devices, and two pure white aspen wands protruded from inside. The devices completed their transformation in an instant. After the transformation, two shoulder cannons, similar to those in the Predator movie, stood up on Anduin's shoulders. Here it is. As the two shoulder cannons took shape, a burst of silver light erupted from the guns, and two plasma lasers, each as thick as a finger, shot out. They struck the gap in the magic shield that clamped the body of the destroyer sword. Simultaneously, Anduin continued to channel magic power into the destroyer, causing the wild thunder emanating from the long sword to become even more dazzling. Soon, both Anduin and the Thunderbird noticed that the magic shield holding Desolation could no longer hold up, and the long sword was slowly advancing. Realizing this, the Thunderbird was filled with dread. He never expected Anduin to advance instead of retreating, and the stream of water emanating from him seemed to completely ignore the attack of the blue fiendfire. The two shoulder cannons were putting immense pressure on the magic shield, which seemed on the verge of collapse. Even if the shield could hold for a while longer, the Thunderbird himself would soon be unable to sustain it. At this moment, he not only had to channel a massive amount of magic power into the Yanren in his hand to support the Thunder Sword in front of him, but also maintain the magic shield and the surrounding fire. Even if his magic power reserves were sufficient, the enormous output required in such a short period, divided into 3 parts, was unsustainable. This situation mirrored the magic power output theory. Why that Lily once taught Anduin, no matter how much magic power a wizard possesses, the amount he can output per unit of time is limited, unless he risks breaking the magic power pipeline by overpressurizing it. Thunderbird was already under high-intensity pressurization, and his current physical condition was poor, with internal injuries constantly tormenting him. Given the current situation, he couldn't last long at all. Thunderbird gritted his teeth in frustration. He didn't expect a young wizard who had just come of age to push him to this point. But with the current situation, he estimated that in 10 seconds, no, maybe only 5 seconds, even if he wasn't pierced by the long sword in front of him, his body would collapse from the instantaneous output of too much magic power. No, I can't go on like this. I will definitely lose if the battle continues. After assessing the situation, Thunderbird made a decisive decision. He immediately dispersed the blue fiendfire that was rushing towards Anduin and concentrated all his magic power into the Yan blade in his hand. With all his strength, he swiped upwards. This action directly shredded the already precarious magic shield. Although it failed to completely block Anduin's long sword, it gave him a moment to breathe. Seizing this brief respite, Thunderbird held the blue hellblade across his chest and quickly stepped back. He then swiftly took out a rusty iron pocket watch from his body, held it in his palm, and activated it immediately. It turned out to be another port key, and he intended to escape. End of this chapter. Chapter 439, The Saints Meeting? Heh, you think you can just run away when you can't win, and still call yourself a pure duelist? Anduin taunted, a sneer playing on his lips as he observed the Thunderbird's actions. Thunderbird, Thunderbird, it turns out you're nothing but a coward, greedy for life and afraid of death. The Thunderbird stared at the portkey in his hand with astonishment. He had activated the alchemy prop just moments ago, so why hadn't it worked? Was it broken? Impossible. You keep claiming to be strong, treating others as waste, and constantly despising wizards who use alchemy equipment in battle. But look at what you have in your hands. You're using alchemy tools too. Hypocrite, Anduin mocked, slowly walking towards the trembling Thunderbird, who was bleeding from 7 orifices, with the destroyer sword held upside down. Did you do this? Thunderbird's expression was a mix of vicious hatred and fear as he realized the portkey was invalid. After seeing you use the portkey to escape last time, did you think I would come here unprepared? Anduin sneered. I'm going to make it clear to you today what happens when you provoke an alchemist. Not only is the portkey useless, but within a radius of more than 10 kilometers, neither apparition, sound, nor distress signals will work. Even your mask that can communicate over long distances has been cut off, Anduin continued. Thunderbird was shocked. He immediately tried the mask's communication function and found it unresponsive. His face grew uglier by the second. You even know about the mask. It seems Azalea has completely fallen for you? Azalea? So she's the mole in the Ministry of Magic, Anduin said, a look of realization dawning on his face. What, isn't Azalea the one who betrayed me? Thunderbird asked, astonished. Of course not her, Anduin shook his head mockingly. As an alchemist, I have a wide network of contacts. Besides her, can't you think of anyone else? Others? Alchemist? There are only 2 people who knew I would come here today. Could it be? Thunderbird muttered to himself, then looked at Anduin in disbelief. That's right, it's Sebastian, your Lord Sphinx, the leader of the Egyptian branch, Anduin laughed teasingly. Anduin's words seemed to be the final blow to Thunderbird's mind. He shook his head in disbelief, but Anduin's accurate knowledge of his code name and real name left him dazed. Impossible. Why would he betray me? He shouted, his eyes blank. You'll have to ask him. He contacted me personally. To get your whereabouts, I paid for the agency rights of my alchemy company in Egypt. Your life is worth at least tens of thousands of galleons. The man knows how to do business. Anduin lied smoothly. He wasn't sure if Thunderbird had any hidden cards or other means of conveying information, so he not only wanted to beat him, but also deceive him. Thunderbird wouldn't hear a single truth from him. Sphinx. Sebastian. Could it be because... Thunderbird's expression grew more ferocious as he seemed to realize something. I wondered why this guy wanted to stop me from killing Martin Grenville, a traitor. It turns out he was still daydreaming about reviving the saints. Church's conservatives are really not trustworthy, Thunderbird muttered viciously, already in a state of confusion. Martin Grenville? Isn't that the owner of the tavern where he lives? Why is there still something about the Saints Association? Anduin didn't expect that his nonsensical talk would yield unexpected gains, but now was not the time to dwell on these things. He had recovered, and it was time to take this guy down. After a moment of thought, Anduin stood up, clasped his hands tightly, and approached Thunderbird with sharp eyes. Wait! Thunderbird immediately dropped the portkey in his hand after seeing Anduin's actions. He raised his hand to try to stop him. I can make a deal with you. As long as you let me go, I am willing to let go of any resentment. And what Sebastian can give you, I can give you too. I have a lot of resources and wealth, and I am willing to exchange them with you. I can even sign an unbreakable oath with you, as long as you let me go. Looking at Anduin, who was still approaching, unmoved, Thunderbird panicked. He shouted at him intermittently, not even realizing that the corners of his mouth were drooling in his desperation. It's so ironic. Anduin shook his head with a sneer. Where was your arrogant look before? What about the crazy energy in the battle? I didn't expect you to be such a coward. You've really disgraced the art of dueling. I can't die yet, Thunderbird shouted loudly, ignoring everything else. Our ideal has not been completed, and my mission cannot end here. Thunderbird no longer had the haughty attitude he once had. He looked like a desperate man facing a midlife crisis. Please, Anduin, I admit that you are stronger than me. Saying these words seemed to have exhausted all the strength in Thunderbird's body. He even bent over as if he had lost his soul. It's too late for you to say that. Anduin looked at Thunderbird calmly, without hesitating for a moment. He continued to walk towards him firmly. You forced me! Thunderbird, whose eyes were bleeding from the aftermath of the explosion, now had even redder eyes. He suddenly aroused the magic power of his whole body, obviously preparing for a last stand. He pulled out the Yan blade again with overload, making the long knife composed of blue fire in his hand more solid, changing from light blue to dark blue. Heh! Who wants to fight you desperately? Anduin smiled coldly when he saw this. He stopped his forward pace, quickly backed up a bit, and at the same time stretched out his left hand and snapped his fingers ferociously. Boom! There was another loud noise, and another explosion occurred under Thunderbird's feet. Although the intensity of the explosion was not as strong as before, Thunderbird's state was much worse. The reason Anduin had spent so much time talking to him was actually to buy time for the deployment of the explosive spider. He could easily deal with Thunderbird without resorting to swords and guns, especially against an opponent whose strength was inferior. Ah! Thunderbird, hit by the explosion, let out a shrill scream, as his body was severely knocked into the air. He had condensed all his magic power into the Yan blade and had no energy left to prop up another scarlet magic shield. This time, he took the full brunt of the damage. As Thunderbird was blown away by the explosion, he might have regretted his choices. He had stepped on thunder 3 times in his life, and the result was worse each time. Perhaps he shouldn't have provoked an enemy like Anduin at all. Anduin, who saw Thunderbird being blown away, did not stand there quietly watching. Anduin moved swiftly, covering the distance in a few quick strides. He reached the landing point before the Thunderbird could touch down. With precise timing, he swung his weapon, striking hard. "What?" The Thunderbird screamed in agony, watching helplessly as his right arm, which held the magic wand, was severed and flew through the air. The silver spear, which had been glowing with magical energy, began to dim and extinguish due to the lack of power. Bang! The sound of a heavy landing echoed. Despite Thunderbird's formidable physique, the intense battle had taken its toll. He had been directly hit by an explosion, and now his arm was cut off. Remarkably, he was still alive and had the strength to scream. Upon landing, Thunderbird was in a dire state. His feet were shattered, reduced to a mass of shredded flesh below the knees, with cracked bones visible through the mangled tissue. His entire right arm had been severed at the root. The only silver lining was that Anduin's sword, imbued with wild thunder, had cauterized the wound instantly, preventing blood loss and effectively stopping the bleeding. Thunderbird clutched the wound on his right arm with his remaining left hand, wailing in pain. The wild thunder not only PP'd the bleeding, but also inflicted severe pain. His face was a mess of snot and saliva. Anyone witnessing this scene might have thought Anduin was a sadistic murderer torturing his victim. "Hog!" Anduin shouted, pulling out 2 spirit-binding snakes to tightly bind the Thunderbird. He wasn't about to let his enemy relax even for a moment. Only enemies who have completely lost the ability to fight and move are good enemies. Who knew if Thunderbird's screams were a ruse? "Yes, my lord, here we come." Hog's voice came from a distance. Soon he appeared, maneuvering carefully as he approached. It wasn't that Hog was unwell. Anduin had planted landmines over several miles. Due to their abundance, he hadn't used alchemical bombs, but rather Muggle mines made of gunpowder. Regardless of who stepped on them, they would explode. Hog was simply avoiding the buried mines. "My lord, what shall we do next?" Hog asked after making a wide detour to reach Anduin. "Proceed according to the original plan. Remember to reserve more," Anduin ordered calmly. End of this chapter. Chapter 440, Interrogation. "Yes, my lord," Hog replied crisply, moving with ease. He first took out a few tourniquets and tied them tightly around Thunderbird's wounds to ensure the captive wouldn't lose too much blood. Then, he retrieved a box from his space equipment. The cold air that escaped when he opened it indicated that the box had a refrigeration function. Hog, using his nimble dog claws, skillfully manipulated a needle, drawing blood from Thunderbird's body and filling 24 test tubes. During the process, he even forced 2 bottles of blood potion and a bottle of healing potion into Thunderbird. Usually idle, Hog now displayed the proficiency of a professional nurse, cleaning and bandaging the wounds with such skill that it sent chills down Thunderbird's spine. What was this dog planning to do to him? Meanwhile, Anduin was busy restoring the scene. Using the restoration curse, he repaired the bombed ground to its original state. He then used control magic to retrieve the landmines and exploding spiders he had planted earlier. Anduin had set numerous traps for this battle, nearly exhausting his entire stock for the year. It had taken him a whole day just to set up the scene. Additionally, he had deployed dozens of jammers and portkey blockers, which made it no surprise that Thunderbird was captured so easily. Perhaps this silver spear was more powerful than Anduin, but he was too conceited to face a well-prepared alchemist. As Hog dealt with Thunderbird, Anduin cleaned up the scene. The efficiency of this man and dog team was impressive. In no time, the area returned to its original state, as if no one had ever been there. "My lord, it's done. I've drawn 200 cc of blood. After testing, it hasn't been contaminated. Meanwhile, Thunderbird's vital signs are normal." Hog reported quickly, wagging his tail. "Very well, this is my blood. Let's camp here and refine the blood on the spot," Anduin said, handing 2 test tubes to Hog. Camp here directly? Won't it be exposed? Didn't you decide to go back to the hotel before proceeding? Hog asked, puzzled, as he took the test tubes from Anduin. That hotel isn't safe, and the identity of its owner is questionable. It would be too risky to move back there, Anduin replied, recalling that Thunderbird had mentioned Martin's name earlier. He pointed to an open space nearby. Let's camp there. With enough shielding jammers around, there will be no risk of exposure. Understood. Hog, who had been with Anduin for many years, knew that his lord valued efficiency in business. Without wasting time, he rushed out, took out the tools, and began setting up the tent. What on earth are you going to do? Thunderbird finally woke up from the severe pain of his wounds and asked Anduin, who was healing him without killing him. You'll know soon enough, Anduin replied coldly, picking up the items he had taken from Thunderbird. As a senior executive of the Silver Spear Club, Thunderbird didn't carry many items. Apart from his aspen wand, mask, and portkey, he had only a leather pouch that had been enchanted with the untraceable stretching charm. From this leather bag, Anduin found more than 1,000 galleons in cash and several bottles of potions, most of which were common tonics and healing potions. However, one potion in an exquisite crystal bottle stood out. It contained half a bottle of scarlet liquid with a very pungent smell. Despite his extensive knowledge, Anduin couldn't identify its ingredients or purpose. Inside the leather pocket, aside from the potions, there were only a few pieces of parchment left. One of these was identical to the black market invitation letter he had received from Azalea. It seemed the Sphinx had also provided him with a copy, and the address of the black market was thoughtfully noted on the back. Among the other parchments was a fantastic beast's smuggling record, which matched the one he had obtained from the werewolf wizard. The remaining parchments contained detailed information about the black market in the United States, including its location, the owner, and a list of collaborators. This was an unexpected find, and Anduin carefully put them away after inspecting them. He then took out the bottle of scarlet potion and looked at Thunderbird. "What is this?" Anduin asked. When Thunderbird saw the potion, his expression turned grim. It was clearly a very important item to him. "Don't waste your efforts. You won't get any information from me," Thunderbird said resentfully, then closed his eyes and pretended to be dead. A coward who begged for mercy just now has suddenly grown a spine. "What a joke," Anduin sneered, then stopped talking. It didn't take long for Hog to set up the tent. Though it appeared small, it was clearly a spatial prop enhanced with the no-trace stretching charm. Anduin silently picked up Thunderbird and carried him into the tent. The peaceful atmosphere inside made Thunderbird very uneasy. He still didn't know what the young wizard intended to do. When Thunderbird saw the interior of the tent, his unease grew. The tent had been set up as a biological laboratory, with a neat medical bed in the center and various workbenches around it. Alchemy instruments and tools, which he couldn't understand, were scattered about, and the pungent smell of disinfectant filled the air. After entering the tent, Anduin slammed Thunderbird onto the medical bed. Without saying a word, he secured Thunderbird and attached some wires with suction cups from the nearby equipment to him in an orderly manner. The silent atmosphere made Thunderbird very uncomfortable. Unable to move, and with his magic drained by the 2 alchemy snakes, he could only shout in panic. "What are you doing? If you want to kill me, just do it. Who do you think I am? I won't let you insult me," Thunderbird yelled. "Well, I know," Anduin replied calmly. "As a high-ranking member of the Silver Spear, if I ask you directly, I won't get the answers I want. And with the methods of your organization, truth potions and legitimacy won't work. So I can only resort to torture. Sorry." Anduin's flat tone made Thunderbird's hair stand on end. His frankness left Thunderbird speechless, unsure of how to respond. "Let me explain. I will first secure your limbs, oh no, your left hand and 2 half legs, and put braces on you," Anduin said, stuffing something into Thunderbird's mouth. "This is to prevent you from hurting yourself. These wires connected to your body will monitor your physical condition to avoid any symptoms that might cause you to die. Don't worry, I will make sure you stay alive," Anduin continued calmly. He then took out 2 needles filled with liquid from a nearby medicine box and injected them into Thunderbird one by one. These are two kinds of Muggle potions. I won't tell you their specific names. You wouldn't understand them anyway. One will amplify your senses, especially your sense of touch, and the other will keep you alert and awake, Anduin explained, showing a wicked smile as he looked at the fear in Thunderbird's eyes. Let's begin. What followed was an experience Thunderbird would never forget, the longest half-hour of his life. His muscles were stiff from the pain that racked his body, but he could only watch as Anduin did whatever he wanted to him, like a piece of sculpture. He was painfully aware, watching Anduin stab tiny steel needles into his fingertips and drive red-hot steel nails into his thigh. He let out deep whimpers, utterly helpless. Whenever he was on the verge of fainting from the severe pain, Anduin would considerately slow down his movements and feed him tonics to restore his strength. It didn't take long, but Thunderbird felt as if he had spent half his life in that torment. His eyes had gradually become numb, transitioning from initial panic and resentment to a hollow emptiness. He now felt that being alive was unbearably painful. But Anduin had thought of everything. Thunderbird couldn't even bite his tongue to end his suffering. After what seemed like an eternity, Anduin finally stopped and gently removed the braces from Thunderbird's mouth. "The first half is over, Mr. Thunderbird. Is there anything you want to tell me now?" Anduin wiped the sweat from his forehead and spoke in a calm tone. "I'll tell you everything you want to know. Just don't continue. You are simply a devil." Thunderbird whimpered in a hoarse voice, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't bear it any longer. He had seen torture and interrogation before, but this was the first time he had experienced such relentless torment without being asked a single question. Looking at the spare torture equipment next to him, he knew Anduin had other methods he hadn't yet used. Thunderbird had actually surrendered more than 10 minutes ago, but he hadn't even had a chance to speak. "It's good that you're willing to talk now. I thought you were really tough, seeing how hard you kept your mouth shut," Anduin nodded in satisfaction. "Let's start with your identity, Mr. Thunderbird. Your real name, nationality, birth date, and usual occupation." "My real name is Gerald Stevens, a German. I usually work as a bounty hunter. As for my age..." Thunderbird hesitated for a moment. "I am 32 years old. You still want to lie to me? Do you think I can't see through your lies?" Anduin had been using legilimency the entire time and instantly noticed the mental anomaly when Thunderbird mentioned his age.